3 hours of the darkest human thoughts ever imagined to fall asleep. 2. Have you ever wondered what the darkest part of your mind truly looks like? Not the fear of death, but the fear of meaninglessness. Not the scream, but the silence after it. What if the thoughts you hide are not monsters, but mirrors? What if your insomnia isn't a problem to fix, but a portal into something deeper? Tonight, we won't chase the light. We'll descend, gently, curiously, into the places most people turn away from. Because within every shadow, there's a thought that has never been fully heard. This is not a horror story. It's a quiet unraveling of what it means to be human, to ache, to question, to float in the fog between logic and dream. So lie back, let go of the need to understand, and simply fall. The mirror that lies. Every night we drift back, not just into sleep, but into ourselves, or so we think. We lay our heads down, retreat from the noise of the day, and return to the familiar hum of our inner world. But what if that familiarity is a trick? What if the self we return to is only a reflection, and that reflection is already broken? Think of a mirror, not a physical one, but the kind we carry inside. Our thoughts, our memories, our feelings. This mirror tells us who we are. It flashes images of our childhood, the beliefs we hold dear, the personality we defend, the wounds we've nursed. But this mirror is not clean. It's warped by time, emotion, fear. Its edges are cracked by the stories we were told and the stories we've told ourselves. What we call memory is not a record, but a performance. Every time we remember, we rewrite. We don't recall moments, we reconstruct them. Slightly different, slightly shaped by who we are now, not who we were then. Even our perception, how we interpret the world around us, is never objective. We filter everything through invisible lenses: culture, trauma, bias, hope. So when you say, "This is who I am," what are you really saying? Are you the voice in your head, or the silence beneath it? Are you the dreamer, or the dream? It's unsettling to think that your identity might be less like a statue carved in stone and more like a shadow on the wall, always changing with the light. If your self is a story, who's the author? Is it truly you? Or are your thoughts stitched together from the phrases of your parents, your teachers, the movies you love, the pain you never unpacked? Sometimes we speak with voices that aren't ours. We defend beliefs we never chose. We wear masks so long, the skin forgets where the mask ends and we begin. And then, there are moments, sudden, sharp, when the mirror refuses to reflect, when we look inward and see nothing, just a blank, or worse, something unfamiliar. That's when we panic, because the idea that we are not stable, not whole, not real in the way we want to be, is terrifying. But maybe that's also where freedom begins, in admitting that the mirror lies, in realizing that we are not fixed, that the self is not a destination, but a river, always moving, always shaped by the shorelines of experience. Maybe the goal isn't to find ourselves, but to watch ourselves become. So close your eyes, let the mirror blur, let the edges of your identity melt like morning fog. Maybe the next thought that drifts into your mind isn't yours. But maybe, just maybe, it's more honest than anything you've claimed before. Let's listen to it, gently, without judgment. Because sometimes the truth only arrives when we stop trying to recognize it. The thought you're not allowed to have. Some thoughts don't knock. They slip in through the cracks when you're tired, when the house of your mind is quiet. like smoke under a door. They linger at the edge of your awareness, half formed, half feared. You weren't trying to think them. But now, they're here. A woman walks through a silent train station. She pauses at a vending machine. A man standing nearby says gently, "You ever feel like your brain's holding its breath?" She blinks. "All the time," she replies, staring at nothing. And in that pause, unspoken understanding. No names exchanged, but something shared. We learn early what thoughts are acceptable, what we can say out loud, what we must bury. But thought itself has no morality. It just is. Thought springs from the same well as music and nightmares. It lives before rules, before fear, before you were told what kind of mind was good. A child once wondered if her parents would notice if she disappeared. She didn't want to vanish. She was just curious. Curious in the way only children are. That thought was never spoken. It didn't feel allowed, but it stayed. Years later, she still remembers how heavy it was and how light she pretended to be. You might carry one of those thoughts too. Not evil, not wrong, just unspeakable. An image, a desire, a question, the kind you flinch from the moment it arrives. But silence does not dissolve a shadow. It only deepens the contrast. What if I'm not who I think I am? A barista says this under her breath as she wipes a table. The customer nearby lifts an eyebrow but says nothing, and the thought vanishes into steam and coffee foam, but it leaves a trace, like fingerprints on glass. What we suppress, we don't erase. We hide it in attic corners of our mind. But like old furniture, it creaks when the night gets still. Even guilt becomes a disguise sometimes. We scold ourselves for having the thought, but never stop to ask, where did it come from? What part of me was it trying to protect or to warn? You're not strange for having dark thoughts. You're human for noticing them, and stronger for not acting on them. A person can walk through a storm and never become the rain. Maybe that's what makes you good. Not absence of shadow, but your choice not to become it. You've probably heard someone say, "Don't think that way," as if thought were a crime, as if morality began with silence. But thought is not action, and not all silence is virtue. Sometimes the darkest thought is simply the truest wound, wearing a mask that scares even you. A man in a bookstore picks up a novel with no title on the cover. He looks at the clerk and says, "I think I already know what this book says." She smiles and responds, "But knowing doesn't mean you've read it." He buys it anyway. Let's read now, without shame, without panic. Let the forbidden speak in whispers, gentle, steady, free. And if you feel sleep pulling at you, that's okay. You can come back to this later. The thought will still be waiting, not to hurt you, but to be seen. Close your eyes. Let it speak. Not loudly, just enough. Enough to be heard. And then, let go. The stranger inside your skull. You call it I, that whisper in your mind, that voice narrating your day, arguing with itself, dreaming up futures and rehashing old conversations. But what if that voice isn't what you think? What if the you talk to isn't really you? Inside your skull is a world more divided than united. Neuroscience tells us that consciousness isn't a single spotlight. It's a collage, a fractured cathedral of thought, with different regions of your brain lighting up like rival factions. One part wants to move, another hesitates. One urges you to speak, the other edits before your lips can move. You are not a monologue. You are a committee meeting. It's strange, isn't it? That something so intimate, your very sense of self, might be an illusion of unity. Your thoughts don't rise from a throne. They bubble up from many hidden chambers. And by the time they reach your awareness, they've already passed through filters, impulses, habits, and fears. Who decided that? You might ask yourself after a bad decision. But the question itself reveals the mystery. Who is doing the asking, and who is being asked? There's more than one voice in there, and they don't always agree. Some scientists call it the modular mind, like your brain is a parliament of sub-personalities, each with its own agenda. They negotiate, they argue, they take turns at the microphone. Sometimes one of them makes a mistake. Sometimes one shouts so loudly that the rest go quiet, and you, listening from the middle, mistake the loudest for the truest. Have you ever said something and immediately regretted it? That wasn't a lack of control. That was a different you taking the wheel. The impulsive you, the reactive you. Later, the reflective voice steps in and rewrites the memory, pretending it had been in control all along. Now listen carefully, not to the next thought that rises, but to the pause before it. That silence is sacred. It's the space where truth hides, not in what is said, but in what isn't yet formed. Am I this voice? You ask. But maybe the better question is, who's asking? A gentle conversation between two old friends might sound like this. Do you ever feel like your mind argues with itself? All the time. Like there's a version of me that's rational and another that's just chaos with opinions. So which one are you? Honestly, I don't know anymore, but maybe I'm the space between them. That space, between thought and action, impulse and reflection, is where awareness truly begins. You're not the voice, you're the listener, the witness, and perhaps the peacekeeper in a noisy parliament. So the next time your thoughts race, or a voice inside berates you, pause. Don't just listen to the words. Listen to the silence between them. There, you may meet someone you've never truly heard before, the stranger inside your skull. The comfort of meaninglessness. There's a curious silence that follows the thought. What if none of this matters? At first, it stings, like the floor just gave out beneath your feet. But then, strangely, there's calm. A breath you didn't know you were holding suddenly releases. It's not panic, it's stillness. Because if nothing truly matters, you're free. For most of our lives, we're taught to resist that idea. From childhood, meaning is poured into everything: school grades, career paths, family expectations, even how we smile in photographs. There's a script, an order, a ladder to climb. And yet, when we stop clinging to the belief that life must have a pre-written purpose, something unexpected happens. We loosen. We stop bracing against life as if it's a storm to endure, and we begin to float. That's the strange paradox of nihilism. On the surface, it seems like an abyss, a dark place where all value evaporates. But if you step into that void with eyes open, you may notice it isn't a trap. It's a clearing, a vast sky, free of walls. Because when nothing is assigned meaning, you're no longer bound by inherited expectations. You don't have to become someone, don't have to prove your worth, don't have to succeed in anyone else's language. You just are. Maybe this is what Sartre meant when he said we are condemned to be free. The absence of built-in meaning can feel like a burden, but only if we believe we must replace it with something heavy. What if we don't? What if the lightness itself is the gift? A man once asked his friend, "If none of this matters, why bother getting up in the morning?" The friend smiled and said, "Because I can. Because it's my choice, not obligation." That's the shift. When meaning isn't handed to you, it becomes something you create, not chase. A conversation with a stranger, the shape of a cloud, the warmth of tea at midnight. None of it has to matter to the universe to be precious to you. So here you are, awake in a world that may not owe you an answer, that might not care if you win or lose, but also a world that won't punish you for resting, laughing, changing your mind, or doing nothing at all. That's where the comfort lies. Not in resignation, but in liberation. You are not trapped by the myth of meaning. You are suspended in the possibility of it. Let go now, not into despair, but into a gentle, formless sky. Not everything needs a reason. Not every moment has to prove its worth. And maybe, just maybe, that's the space where peace lives. The memory that lied to you. There's a strange ache that visits when you're alone with your thoughts. It arrives not like a scream, but like a photograph. Quiet, familiar, slightly wrong. A moment you swear happened just that way, yet something in you knows it didn't. Maybe the sun wasn't out that day. Maybe she never said those words. Maybe it wasn't love, just a need you dressed up in memory's borrowed fabric. Do you remember what you were wearing that day? He hesitated. I thought it was the blue shirt, but then I saw the photo. It was green. She smiled, not unkindly. Strange how the mind tints even cotton with nostalgia. Memory, it turns out, isn't a library. It's a theater, and the mind is the director who keeps rewriting the script, sometimes to protect you, sometimes to please you, sometimes just because. You think you're replaying a scene from your life, but what you're watching is the fifth rehearsal of a story that's already drifted from truth. There's comfort in that idea, and danger too. A man once recalled a childhood summer by the lake. He could describe the ripple of water, the laughter, the taste of cold lemonade. It was his anchor, a proof that joy had once been easy. Then one day his sister told him, "That wasn't our summer. That was a movie we watched. We never went to that lake." For a moment, he stopped breathing. And yet, his body remembered the warmth. His emotions didn't feel betrayed, because even a false memory can hold real feelings. The trick of it all is that the mind doesn't care whether something truly happened. It only cares how deeply you felt it. Did I ever tell you about my first kiss? Number. But you looked away when you said that, like you weren't sure it belonged to you. Maybe it doesn't anymore. Some memories were never yours to begin with. They were borrowed from family stories, television scenes, or quiet hopes repeated so often they passed for fact. Others were edited by trauma, trimmed to fit the size of what you could carry. There are days you're sure someone hurt you, nights you wonder if you imagined it, and in between, 100 versions of the event swirl in your head, none of them settling into certainty. Memory is not the keeper of truth. It is the painter of feeling. And sometimes it lies with the best intentions, to help you sleep, to help you forgive, to keep you from breaking open too soon. Someone once whispered on a train platform, "It's okay if you misremember." Sometimes, forgetting is how the soul repairs the cracks, and then they were gone before the doors even closed. What if your proudest moment was built on a mistake? What if your greatest shame was never witnessed by anyone but yourself? Would it make them less real or more yours? A woman at a cafe once said, "I think I remember my mother braiding my hair, but when I asked her, she said she never learned how." The barista, handing over her tea, replied gently, "Maybe that memory is you, braiding love into the space where it was missing. And that too can be healing. Let the past breathe now. Let it be soft around the edges, like a page worn thin by too many readings. You don't need to fix it. You don't even need to trust it. Just know it tried to serve you, even when it got the facts wrong. Close the album, not to forget, but to rest. The next thought is arriving, and this one won't ask to be remembered at all, only felt. Just for a moment, just until sleep takes your hand. The freedom that feels like a trap. You say you want freedom. Everyone does. It's the anthem of the modern soul. The open sky, the unlocked door, the idea that no one and nothing owns your path. But what if that very freedom is the weight on your back? What if the thing you crave most is what quietly haunts you? In the silence between options, a strange fear stirs. You stare down 2 roads, maybe 5, maybe infinite. And though no one is stopping you, your feet feel heavy, not because of chains, but because of the question, what if I choose wrong? Jean-Paul Sartre once whispered a terrifying truth. We are condemned to be free, not gifted, not blessed, condemned. Because with total freedom comes total responsibility. There is no one else to blame, no parent, no boss, no God even, just you, and the echo of the choice you didn't make. You begin to realize that freedom isn't the escape from structure. It's the burden of infinite structure, the open field that stretches forever, but offers no signs, no shelter, no map. And the longer you walk, the more you wonder, was I ever meant to choose this? Or did I simply fear standing still? One evening, 2 friends sit quietly on a bench beneath an amber sky. Do you ever wish someone would just tell you what to do? One asks, voice low. The other nods, chuckles softly. All the time. Freedom's exhausting. And yet, we fought so hard for it. Yeah, the second replies, watching a leaf spiral down. And now we get to blame ourselves forever. Is that what freedom really is? The right to punish yourself for everything? Every decision you've made, every road not taken, starts to whisper in the background. And those whispers don't fade. They collect. They form a chorus of what-ifs and should-haves, echoing long after you've moved on. It's not the prison of control you fear. It's the ache of limitless doors, each leading somewhere you'll never fully understand. So you scroll, you wait, you stall, not because you don't have options, but because you have too many. And that, somehow, becomes its own kind of trap, a freedom that offers no rest, no certainty, just endless questions painted as possibilities. But here's the gentle truth. Maybe you don't have to be sure. Maybe freedom isn't about knowing where you're going. It's about walking with grace. Even when the fog never lifts, you are free, yes. But that freedom doesn't promise peace. It promises only the chance to make meaning out of the unknown. So step softly now, not because you'll get lost, but because maybe, just maybe, the next path isn't about the choice at all. Maybe it's about how you walk it. The thought that thinks you. What if you're not the one thinking right now? What if the thought that feels so personal, so yours, is just passing through you, like a breeze through an open window, like a song through a quiet room? You sit there, maybe in silence, maybe in contemplation, and something arises, a memory, an idea, a worry. But before you can claim it, hold it, or even fully recognize it, it's already fading. This is the mystery of the thought that thinks you. Some Eastern philosophies, Zen Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta, offer a perspective radically different from what most of us in the modern West are taught. They suggest that the mind isn't a tool in your hand, ready to be used at will. It's not a hammer you pick up, nor a machine you program. It's more like a tide, something that flows with a will of its own. Thoughts arise not because you choose them, but because consciousness itself is like weather, full of conditions, patterns, and changes you didn't authorize. You're not thinking, you're being thought. That's a weird idea, someone might say aloud, lying in the dark beside their partner, and the other might respond softly, maybe. But haven't you ever had a thought pop up and you wonder, where did that come from? Yeah, especially at night, like dreams sneaking in before I'm even asleep. Exactly. And you didn't ask for it, it just showed up. So if I didn't think it, am I really the one thinking? Silence follows, not an absence, but a pause that listens. The illusion that you are the master of your mind is comforting. It creates a sense of control. You believe you're choosing what to focus on, what to believe, what to feel. But when you examine closely, when you really sit in stillness, you start to notice that thoughts don't ask permission. They arrive unannounced. Some are welcome, others are not. Some uplift, some destroy. And none of them, not a single one, was truly yours in the way you once believed. This realization is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it shakes the foundation of selfhood. If you are not the thinker, if you are not the one directing the orchestra of your mind, then who or what are you? Are you just a vessel? A stage where thoughts perform their brief drama before vanishing into the wings? Or are you the quiet observer, the one who sees, who notices, but never acts? But it's also liberating. If you are not your thoughts, then you are not your fear. You are not your shame. You are not your intrusive memories or your imagined failures. These things pass through you, but they are not you. You are the sky, vast, untouched, while thoughts are the weather. Let them pass. No storm defines the sky. Sometimes a person can sit in meditation and watch thoughts rise and fall without interference. One moment it's the grocery list, the next a childhood song, then an old regret, and after a while, silence. Not because the mind was conquered, but because the waves ran out of momentum. In that silence, something remains. Not a voice, not an identity, but presence. Pure, wordless presence. And that presence never needed to speak. You don't need to cling to the next thought. You don't need to wrestle the last one. Let the wave pass. The ocean was always deeper than its surface. And you, whatever you truly are, were never just the foam. You were the stillness beneath. The silence that watches you. You sit there in the quiet. No music, no movement, no words. Just the low hum of your breath, the soft pulse in your fingertips, and the space between thoughts. You think you're alone, but you feel it. Not with your ears, not even with your skin. Something is watching, but it's not someone. It isn't God in the traditional sense. It isn't a camera in the ceiling. It isn't some external eye peering in from the dark. It's something older, still, deeper than thought. It doesn't judge or whisper or interfere. It only watches, not with curiosity, but with presence. A vast, unblinking stillness, a mirror that doesn't reflect. It absorbs. Maybe you've felt it before, right before sleep, or in the middle of the night when the world forgets to be loud. That sense that something is aware of you, of this moment, of everything. And yet, it doesn't do anything. It just is. Philosophers, mystics, and meditators have tried to name it. Some call it the witness, others call it pure awareness, but names are too heavy for it. It doesn't care what you call it because it existed long before language. It was there when you took your first breath, and it'll still be there when your last breath fades into the same silence it came from. It doesn't think, it doesn't remember, it doesn't dream, and yet, without it, you wouldn't know that you're thinking, or remembering, or dreaming. It is the canvas beneath the paint, the sky beneath the clouds, the one thing that never changes, no matter what storm passes through your life. Now here's the twist that makes your mind fold in on itself. If that is you, the real you, the unchanging watcher behind the scenes, then who's doing all the living? Who's chasing goals? Who's falling in love? Who's afraid of being hurt, or excited to succeed, or angry at the news, or disappointed in the mirror? What if all of that, the personality, the memory, the emotion, is just the mask, a beautiful, temporary performance, and the real you isn't the actor, but the stage? The silence isn't empty. It's full of noticing, full of knowing. And when you stop trying to be someone, when you stop grasping at the story you've told yourself, you fall back into it. Not down, not up, just inward. I don't know who I am anymore, someone once said. Maybe that's the beginning of finally seeing. In a small room, two friends sit in the dim light, not speaking. One looks up and breaks the silence. Do you ever feel like someone's watching, even when you're alone? The other doesn't answer at first, just stares ahead. Then finally says, "Yeah, but I think it's me. The me that isn't doing anything, just noticing." The first friend frowns. "You mean like your conscience? Number, not guilt, not thought, just something that's there before the noise starts. A kind of silence that sees." They sit quietly again, this time not trying to fill the silence, letting it fill them. Let that silence hold you now. There's nothing to fix, nothing to chase, nothing to explain. You are not behind in your life. You are not wrong for being still. You are not broken. The part of you that sees was never broken. It watches, not with eyes, but with being. And it waits for nothing, because it is everything. No fear, no judgment, just this, seeing. The kindness of the void. You've been taught to run from emptiness. That silence is awkward. That blankness is a sign something's missing. But what if the void wasn't your enemy, but your oldest friend? What if it wasn't cold or cruel, but a gentle space waiting with open arms, not to take, but to hold? A woman once whispered to her partner in the middle of the night, "Do you ever feel like something is watching you, but not in a scary way? Like it's waiting for you to stop trying so hard?" He smiled in the dark. "Maybe it's the void," he said. "Maybe it's the silence that finally wants to be noticed." In Zen teachings, there's a term, sunyata, emptiness, but it doesn't mean lifeless or dead. It means undisturbed, like snow before footsteps, like a page before the poem. It is the potential of all things, not the absence of them. In that sense, the void is not the end of meaning. It's where meaning begins. The blank sky invites the bird. The still pond invites the reflection. So perhaps it's not emptiness we fear, but the honesty it demands. We fill our minds with noise, screens, plans, thoughts layered upon thoughts, because stillness feels like falling, and falling feels like losing. But the irony is, we're always falling. Thoughts fall into other thoughts. Days fall into nights. We fall in love. We fall apart. The question is, what are we falling into? And what if the void isn't a hole, but a hammock? There's a kindness in that kind of falling. The way a mother holds a crying child without fixing the problem. The way the night sky holds every star, even the ones that have already died. The void, too, holds you. Not to correct or scold or improve, but simply to allow. It doesn't rush, it doesn't label. It doesn't even need you to be anything but exactly as you are. A man once said, "I'm afraid of doing nothing. Like if I stop, the world will forget me." His friend replied, "Then maybe it's time to meet the part of yourself that never needed to be remembered. The one who was there before the stories, before the striving. That part of you, the original silence, is the void's echo. And maybe this is the softest place you'll ever land, not the noise of your thoughts, not the weight of your name, but that gentle space between breaths where no one is watching, and yet everything is aware. That space loves you, without expectation, without effort. So don't resist it tonight. Don't tense when the thoughts quiet down. Don't panic when the goals blur. Just fall, not down, but into the kindness of the void. You are safe here. You always were. The question with no words. There's a question you've been holding for so long it no longer feels like a question. It feels like you. It wasn't spoken. It never formed itself into words. But it's there, buried beneath everything you've said and done. A tension that hums in your chest when you're alone. A silence that follows even the loudest days. It's not something you ask aloud, not because you're afraid of the answer, but because you wouldn't know how to ask. Sometimes, in the dark just before sleep, it stirs. Not with clarity, but with presence. It's not a sentence, it's a weight. You feel it in your bones, not your thoughts. You catch glimpses of it in dreams, like a face behind fogged glass. There's no language big enough to hold it, because it isn't just one question. It's all of them. Who am I? Why does it feel like something's missing? Is there more? And yet, none of those are quite it. Maybe that's why you've never asked it aloud. Maybe it's why no answer has ever satisfied you. You've read books, listened to advice, talked to friends, but the ache remains. The quiet ache between breaths, a whisper too soft to understand, but too loud to ignore. Two people sit by a window in the late evening. One of them finally says, "Do you ever feel like there's a question inside you, but you don't even know what you're asking?" The other nods slowly, all the time, like I'm chasing something, but I don't know what it is, just that I'd know if I ever found it. "Do you think we're supposed to find it?" the first asks. "Maybe not," the second replies. "Maybe the asking is enough." There's comfort in that, in not needing to solve the riddle, to live as the question itself, because some truths aren't meant to be dissected or defined. They're meant to be carried, like music you hum without knowing the lyrics, like a feeling that stays even after the moment ends. What if that question isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a companion to walk beside? What if it's what keeps you searching, growing, becoming? If it had words, maybe you'd try to close it, file it away as answered, but it doesn't. And so, it lives on, as movement, as wonder, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You don't have to name the question. You don't have to explain it. You only have to let it rest tonight, let it settle in your chest without trying to pin it down. The moon doesn't ask why it rises. The wind doesn't ask where it's going. And you too don't need to ask. You are the question, and perhaps the answer. Close your eyes. No need to speak. The silence already understands. The dream that forgot. It was dreaming. There's a quiet moment, maybe just before sleep Or maybe during an afternoon when the world feels too soft. When something slips, you stare at your hand and it feels unfamiliar. You say your name and it echoes back with a strange hollowness. You wonder, am I really here or just dreaming I am? Philosophers have asked this for centuries. Descartes doubted everything, even his own body, because he said, dreams can feel so real that we don't realize they're dreams until we wake. Mystics, too, whisper this riddle with reverence, that life itself may be a veil, a theater, a stage where the actors forget their lines and believe the play is real. But here's the strange part. If this is a dream, it's a vivid one. Pain stings. Love feels warm. Time crawls and races with the same merciless rhythm it always has. And still, beneath all that texture, beneath every sharp detail and logical explanation, there's a doubt you can't shake. Not a fear, not even a suspicion. Just a presence, like a half-remembered melody from another world that you hum without realizing. What if none of this is real? She asked one night, staring at the ceiling. Would it change anything? He whispered. She thought for a long time. Maybe it would make me braver. Maybe that's the point. If you knew this was a dream, would you dare more? Forgive faster? Dance without shame? Say what you really mean? Or would you despair? Would meaning slip through your fingers like smoke? If everything fades when you wake, does anything matter at all? There's no answer that satisfies both the philosopher and the poet. One seeks proof, the other beauty. But perhaps both are circling the same mystery, the idea that life, even if dreamt, is still lived. Your joy still warms you. Your grief still marks you. A dream can shatter you and still be worth dreaming. Think about the times your own mind betrayed you, memories that twisted, feelings that surged without cause, logic that collapsed in anxiety or ecstasy. Your mind can build palaces, prisons, labyrinths, and you walk through them each day believing the ground is solid. But what if it isn't? What if your entire reality is a story being told in another room? And yet, you are here. You breathe. You read this. You ache. You smile. You hope. If that's not real, then what else could you possibly need? So don't try to wake up. That's not the task. The task is to dream deeper, to move through this world as if every person is a flicker of your own imagination and yet worthy of love. To touch the edge of this strange illusion with reverence, to live as if it matters, even if it might not. Maybe this is the dream that forgot it was dreaming, but maybe, just maybe, it's remembering now. The thought that you are alone. There are moments, quiet, sudden, or stretched across entire seasons, when the feeling creeps in like fog. You could be sitting among friends, walking through a crowd, or lying beside someone you love, and still feel it. That invisible ache that whispers, you are alone. It isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of being seen. Not the glance across the table, not the goodnight hug, but the seeing that reaches inward. And that doesn't come often. Because here's the truth. No one will ever live inside your skin but you. No one else hears your thoughts exactly the way you do. No one else wakes up with your fears or feels your heartbreak at the exact temperature it burns through your chest. You can describe it, you can share it, you can even be held while it happens, but you'll still be the only one living through it. That's not selfish. That's not broken. That's just existence. People call it loneliness, but maybe we've been using the wrong word. Maybe it's not a flaw or a punishment. Maybe it's the baseline condition of being human. a kind of existential gravity pulling us inward, not to isolate, but to show us the depths we carry. You are the only one who can carry your memories, your doubts, your longings, without translation. And while that might feel heavy, it's also a kind of sacred solitude. I once heard someone say, "The scariest thing isn't being alone. It's realizing that no one can follow you into the places you go inside your mind." But what if that's not the enemy? What if that's the birthplace of strength? Think of every artist who ever painted their way through pain, every philosopher who turned solitude into wisdom, every silent walk that turned into a personal breakthrough. Being alone in your experience might just be what allows you to finally hear yourself. Still, that feeling can bite. Late at night, when the world quiets and there's no noise to distract you from yourself, that weight returns. Not loud, just present, like a room with no windows. But what if, just for a second, you remembered that everyone else is feeling it too? Not all the time, not in the same way, but across the street, across the country, across the planet. Someone else is lying awake, wondering if they're the only one aching. And they're not. Maybe we can't fully enter each other's inner worlds, but we can sit beside the doorway. We can say, "I don't understand it all, but I'm here anyway." We can learn the art of being alone together. That paradox might be the most human thing there is. So tonight, if you feel the stillness settle in and whisper that ancient line, "You're alone," try answering back with something softer. Maybe, but not the only one. Because being human is a solitary road, but it winds alongside millions of others who are quietly carrying the same question in the dark. And in that, we are never truly alone. The clock that counts you down. Somewhere, beneath the noise of daily routine, beneath the hum of screens and footsteps, there's a clock you can't hear. It doesn't sit on a wall. It doesn't chime at the hour. But it's there, quietly, relentlessly counting down, not to a birthday, not to midnight, but to the last breath you'll ever take. We rarely think of time this way. Most of us imagine time as a flowing river, a continuous stream we drift along, with bends and rapids, always moving forward. But what if that metaphor is wrong? What if time isn't fluid, but burning, a fuse, a wick? Each moment, each tick, is not something that passes by, but something consumed, lost, gone forever. And the cruelest part? You don't get to see how long your fuse is. You just know it's getting shorter. "Do you think about it much?" she asks over coffee, eyes half lost in thought. "Think about what?" he replies. "That this," she gestures around them, "could be the last time we do this exact moment. That maybe we won't even know when the last time comes." He stares into his cup, the swirl of cream reminding him of smoke. There's something terrifying about that realization, but also something oddly liberating. When we remember that time is limited, not in the abstract, but in the immediate, it forces a kind of honesty. It strips away the illusion that we can put life off, that we can always call them tomorrow, that we can chase our dreams someday, because someday isn't on the clock. Only now is. But for many, that awareness brings not clarity, but paralysis. When you feel the countdown, your breath can quicken. Decisions feel heavier. There's a weight pressing against your chest, the fear of wasting it, of choosing wrong, of looking back with regret. And yet, regret is also a form of time travel, living in the past while the present slips through your fingers. So, what are you supposed to do with this ticking truth? Maybe you don't outrun the clock. Maybe you don't even try. Maybe you just learn to dance with it, to move in rhythm with what remains, to say, I love you when it matters, to stand still and watch the sunlight crawl across a room, to hold your child's hand for just a few more seconds than necessary, not because it stops the countdown, but because it honors it. He looks up from his cup. You're right, he says. About what? That this might be the last time, but that just makes me want to pay more attention. The clock keeps ticking. That's not something you can change. But how you move while it does, that's still yours. So go ahead, dance, cry, say the thing, do the hard thing. Love like you're running out of time, because you are. And somehow, that makes every tick feel like a miracle. The smile that hides the abyss. There's a smile you wear so often, you've forgotten how it began. Maybe it started as a polite gesture, a social reflex, a shield. But over time, it became something else, your second skin. You offer it to the world like a peace treaty, hoping no one notices the war beneath. The corners of your mouth lift, your eyes sparkle just enough, and the room believes you're fine. But the abyss doesn't vanish because you've smiled over it. Human beings are extraordinary performers. We learn early that emotions are currencies. A smile can buy you trust, safety, a bit of silence when the noise inside your chest gets too loud. We learn how to curve our lips just right so that no one asks hard questions. And if they do, we're quick with answers rehearsed 100 times. I'm okay. Just tired. It's been a long week. But what we don't say is the truth, that sometimes behind the warmth, there is a cold that doesn't thaw. You see it in others too. That coworker who laughs the loudest at lunch, the friend who posts cheerful photos with captions that sound a little too forced, the stranger at the grocery store with tired eyes and a bright greeting. We all play the part because somewhere along the way, we were taught that pain is something to hide, not heal. That vulnerability makes us burdens instead of beings. But what if your smile isn't really happiness? It's just habit. What if all the joy you project is more about protecting others from discomfort than expressing your own truth? And more importantly, who are you when the curtain falls? When the door closes and there's no one left to perform for? What remains? There is a silence in that space that can be terrifying, but also sacred. Because in that silence, you meet the only person who cannot be fooled. Yourself. The performance may have earned you safety, even success. But masks, no matter how beautiful, are heavy. They press against the skin until it forgets what it feels like to breathe freely. They teach the heart to perform instead of pulse. And eventually, even you may lose track of where the mask ends and your true face begins. So tonight, just for a moment, let the smile rest. Not because you failed to be strong, but because you deserve to be real. Let the darkness beneath rise, not to drown you, but to be seen. It's not your enemy. It's your shadow, longing to be understood. No one is watching now. No expectations, no scripts. Just the quiet and the reflection staring back at you in the mirror. The one who knows every ache you've hidden behind a grin. And maybe, just maybe, when you stop pretending to be okay, you'll finally begin to be whole. Let the mask fall. Let your face feel the air again. Beneath a smile, there was never an abyss to be feared, only a wound waiting to be touched with truth. The truth you'll never know. There are truths so vast, so ancient, they slip through the cracks of every theory, every sacred text, every sleepless night of searching. These aren't just secrets waiting to be discovered. They are the kind of truths that seem to exist only in their refusal to be found. They stand like shadows behind fogged glass. you sense them, you feel their presence. But the more you reach, the more they disappear into abstraction. And perhaps that's exactly how they were meant to be. Consider the question of consciousness. You are thinking right now, feeling, existing. But what is the thing that knows it's alive? Science cuts into the brain, labels neurons, maps pathways of perception and pain, but it still cannot touch the knower. Philosophy stacks definitions like fragile towers, cogito ergo sum, the self as observer, the ghost in the machine. But all these words feel like shells scattered on a shore we were never meant to cross. Maybe the origin of self-awareness isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a flame to sit beside, warming your hands without needing to explain the fire. And then there is death, that final veil, the edge we all pretend is far off, even as it draws closer each second. Is it a doorway, a dissolve, a return, or just silence that never ends? Religion offers promises. Atheism offers absolutes. But deep in the night, neither side feels certain. What if the truth is not something you will ever know? Not because you're not worthy, but because the knowing itself would unravel the point of living. A soft voice might ask, "But don't you want to know?" And another, quieter one might reply, "More than anything," followed by a long silence. And then, "But maybe that's the wrong question." We're taught from childhood that knowledge is power, that if we try hard enough, we can decode the world, fix the machine, get the answer. But what if wisdom isn't in the knowing, but in the not knowing, in making peace with the eternal mystery that beats behind every sunrise and final breath? There's a kind of beauty in that, the way the stars never explain themselves, the way love doesn't follow logic, the way your most important choices are made not by facts, but by faith, by instinct, by feeling. These are not failures of intelligence. They are the fingerprints of a universe that whispers, "Some truths are meant to be lived, not understood." So can you rest tonight in the unknown? Can you let go of the need to wrap it all in language? Let the unanswered questions cradle you gently. Let them rock you like waves that don't need names. You are allowed to fall asleep not knowing. And in that silence, maybe the closest thing to truth will finally speak. The lie that keeps you alive. We don't survive on facts. We survive on meaning. And often, the meaning isn't true. It's just necessary. Late at night, when the world quiets down and the distractions thin out, something ancient awakens in us. That inner murmur, soft but relentless, begins to ask dangerous questions. Why am I here? What if it never gets better? What if all this effort means nothing? And in response, almost reflexively, we reach for a story, a phrase, a sentence that we know isn't fully real, but feels like it might be. Everything happens for a reason. We whisper it to ourselves like a charm against the dark. We don't know if it's true. Deep down, we suspect it might not be. But that sentence, that small arrangement of words, creates a shape in the fog. It gives pain a pattern. And sometimes, that's enough to keep breathing. There's another one. Tomorrow will be better. It lives in the mouths of people who cry themselves to sleep, but still set an alarm for the next day. It's not logic. It's hope wearing a mask. Because in truth, tomorrow might not be better. It might be lonelier, harder, colder. But if you say it out loud, it helps your hands keep working, your feet keep moving, your heart keep trying. And then there's the big one. Love lasts forever. We know it doesn't. We've watched it wilt, fade, turn cruel. We've buried it, grieved it, seen it walk away. But even after the proof, we still believe. We want to. Because to admit that love is just a moment, beautiful, passing, accidental, feels like cutting off our own air. So here's the strange truth. Sometimes the lies we tell ourselves are not weaknesses. They are survival instincts. Imagine a child waking up from a nightmare, trembling in the dark. A parent strokes their head and says, "It's just a dream. You're safe now." That child calms down. But was it true? Not always. The world is full of dangers, but the softness of that lie becomes a bridge, a temporary shelter to rest inside until the storm outside quiets. We grow up, but we don't stop needing that shelter. We keep telling ourselves stories, not because we're blind to reality, but because sometimes reality is too heavy to carry raw. These gentle lies cushion the blows, soften the corners, help us stand back up when truth alone would leave us crawling. And that raises a difficult question. If something false gives you strength, is it still wrong? There are moments when clarity feels like cruelty, when honesty slices deeper than any deception could. And in those moments, even the Stoics, who praised truth and self-discipline, knew to temper reason with compassion. So tonight, if you find yourself needing the comfort of a phrase you no longer fully believe, don't be ashamed. Let the lie wrap around you. Let it hold you like a lullaby. You can question it tomorrow. For now, just rest. The future that already happened. There's a strange comfort in believing the future is still unwritten, a blank page waiting for the ink of our choices. But what if that page was already filled long before we ever arrived at it? Some physicists, particularly those who follow the block universe theory, propose a radical view of time, that it doesn't flow at all. Instead, they suggest that all moments, every heartbeat you've felt, every decision you think you're about to make, already exist. Not just in memory or anticipation, but in the same way this very moment exists. Past, present, and future are not chapters being written one after another. They are all written, all at once, and we're merely reading them in order. This idea doesn't sit well with how we experience life. You wake up and feel like you have choices. Coffee or tea. Say yes or say no. Stay or go. You believe you're the author of your actions, but in this space-time view, you're more like a character reading your own script, believing every choice is spontaneous, when in truth, every word has been printed long ago. "I feel like I had a choice," she says one night, staring into the ceiling. "I could have gone with him or stayed behind." I remember pausing, thinking, weighing. He looks at her and replies, "What if the pause was part of it? What if every doubt was already written into that moment?" She laughs quietly. "Then what are we even doing here? Maybe reliving, maybe remembering, or maybe just being the memory itself." This isn't about fate in the poetic sense. It's about structure. If space-time is like a loaf of bread, then every slice, every second of your life is already baked into it. You're not moving forward through time. You're simply conscious of one slice at a time. Now ask yourself, if your future already exists, does that make you powerless? Or does it make you permanent? You won't vanish into non-existence because your every moment is, right now, forever. That smile you had as a child, still there? That heartbreak you haven't met yet, already written. Every time you held someone's hand or let go, it's not gone. It's simply living in a slice you haven't turned toward. And yet, this isn't meant to strip your meaning away. In fact, it might give it back to you. Because if everything is fixed, then every tear was necessary. Every laugh had purpose. You don't need to fight time. You just need to feel it. Let it wrap around you like a warm, unchanging wave. The moment you're in right now, it was always waiting for you. You were always meant to arrive. So rest tonight, not in the anxiety of tomorrow, but in the strange miracle that it's already there, complete, full, and real. You don't have to rush forward. You're not behind. You're not late. You are exactly where the universe has always kept you. Let time fold around you now, gently, quietly, like a hand turning the next page of a book that already knows the ending and still wants you to feel every word. The soul that never belonged. There's a strange silence that follows you through life, a kind of invisible hum in the background. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, but it lingers. You feel it most in moments of stillness. In crowds, it whispers. In solitude, it becomes a presence. It's the quiet ache of knowing something is off, even when everything seems fine. The coffee is warm, the sun is rising, people are laughing in the next room, but deep inside, there's a quiet echo that keeps returning. This isn't home. They call it existential displacement, that haunting feeling that you're not from here, not really, that you're a soul wearing a human costume, walking through a world built for people who don't hear the same frequency you do. You smile, nod, play your part, but inside, you wonder if you're just visiting, as if Earth itself is a station you stopped at, not your final destination. You're fluent in the language of others, but your native tongue is something older, wordless, remembered only in dreams. Maybe you've tried to explain it before, only to be met with confusion. Maybe you've felt guilt for not feeling at home in a life others seem to embrace so easily. It's not depression. It's not sadness. It's deeper, a spiritual vertigo, like waking up in someone else's dream and trying to play along. But what if this feeling isn't something wrong with you? What if it's a sign that something in you remembers, not from this life, but from something before this body, before this name? Maybe you're not supposed to fit in. Maybe you're meant to awaken, to remember that the soul is not defined by geography, nationality, or even species. It is not a citizen of Earth. It's a traveler of dimensions. And the aching you feel? It's the call to return, not to a place, but to a knowing. Think about how some people chase belonging in relationships, careers, or religion, only to find the emptiness still there. But for those who listen quietly, there's a different path, not outward, inward, toward the ancient self, the self that never needed approval, never needed to fit, never needed to be understood by the world it walks through. So is this alienation, or is it the first flicker of awakening? Perhaps this world was never meant to contain the fullness of who you are. Maybe the ache isn't exile. Maybe it's guidance, a compass pointing not north, but back to soul. You don't need to run from this feeling. Don't numb it. Don't bury it in noise or routine. Sit with it. Let it speak. Let it remind you of what you've always known but were told to forget. Let it guide you past the surface of identity into the deeper waters of memory, where you are not lost, but infinite. Drift now, not away, but inward, toward the place beyond maps, the place that doesn't exist on this earth but echoes in every heartbeat. Your forgotten home was never a location. It was a truth buried under the noise of survival. And now, it's time to remember. The voice that no one hears. There's a kind of ache that doesn't scream. It doesn't even cry. It just sits there, quiet, persistent, like a breath held too long. It's the pain of being unheard, of speaking not just with your voice, but with your soul, only to feel the words disappear into an indifferent air. You say something real, something raw, maybe even beautiful, and nothing comes back. No acknowledgement, no echo, just the void where connection should have lived. That silence, it isn't neutral. It feels like erasure. Not just that your message was missed, but that you were. And slowly, the mind begins to question, am I still here if no one sees me? No one hears me? Do I still matter? It's not the same as loneliness. Loneliness can be filled by presence, but this is more insidious. This is invisibility. You can sit in a room full of people and still feel like a ghost. You can post, call, cry, write, or even shout. And still, the silence swallows it all. Have you ever tried to explain a thought that meant everything to you, only to be met with a distracted nod or a polite smile that doesn't reach the eyes? That moment lingers. It makes you question whether your truth is too much, or worse, not enough. Over time you shrink, not out of weakness, but self-preservation, because being ignored hurts. So you speak less, share less, dream less. A man once whispered into a canyon just to hear his own voice bounce back, not for validation, but just to know he was real. When no one hears us, that's what we crave. Not applause, not agreement, just recognition. A glance that says, I hear you. I see you. You exist. And yet, here's the strange beauty in it. The silence may not always be absence. Sometimes, silence listens. Not every whisper needs an audience. Sometimes, your voice carves its mark into existence simply by being released. So tonight, even if the world feels deaf, speak your truth. Whisper it into the night, into your journal, into the stars. You don't have to shout. You don't even have to be understood. You only have to be honest. Because the act of expression is not only for others, it's for you. It affirms that you are still here, still thinking, still feeling, still alive. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there, in their own silence, is waiting to hear a voice that sounds like theirs, yours. The kindness you never received. There's a kind of silence that doesn't scream. It hums. You know it well. It lives in the spaces where warmth should have been. A pat on the back that never arrived. A voice that should have said, you did well, but didn't. The comfort you waited for, maybe as a child, maybe just last week, that never came. And still, you carry it, like an unopened letter from a sender who forgot your name. Someone once said, it's not the pain that lingers, it's the absence. It's true, isn't it? Late at night, when the world grows still, you don't always cry for what hurt you. You ache for what never held you. In a quiet apartment, a woman reheats soup. She sets out 2 bowls, out of habit. But one stays full, untouched. She never says it aloud, but the second bowl is for the version of her who once believed someone would sit across from her and care. In a crowded subway, a man sees a toddler stumble. The child's mother gently lifts him and says, I've got you. The man blinks. No one ever said that to him, not once, not in all the years of falling. That's the cruelty of absence. It doesn't shout. It lingers like perfume in a room long emptied. You start to wonder, was I too difficult to love? Too much? Too invisible? But maybe you were never the problem. Maybe they just didn't know how to give what you needed. A stranger once held the door open and said, you seem like you're right on time. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like medicine. We don't need grand gestures. Sometimes healing begins with the smallest kindnesses, the ones you offer to yourself. So tonight, Be the one who says, "You're safe now." Be the one who doesn't rush you, who lets you take a deep breath without earning it. Wrap the blanket tighter. Let the silence cradle you instead of accuse you. Someone might have failed you, but you don't have to. And no, it's not about pretending the wound didn't happen. It's about becoming the hand that gently bandages it, the whisper that says, "You mattered," even when they didn't see it. Let's sit here together, just for a moment longer. You don't have to chase sleep, it'll find you. You don't have to earn comfort, you're allowed to feel it. A man in a bookstore once asked, "Is it okay if I cut in line? My kid's waiting in the car." The cashier smiled. "Of course, take care of him." That's all kindness really is, a small grace that says, "You matter enough." So tonight, let your heart be the kid in the car, waiting, hoping, and let yourself be the one who shows up. Because no matter what was missing, you're here now, and you're allowed to be gentle with you. Sleep if you want to, or don't. Either way, this space holds you. We'll continue when you're ready. No pressure, no noise, just the warmth that was always meant for you. The body that betrays you. There's something quiet and cruel about watching your body change without your permission. One day, you're running through the world with ease, then without warning, gravity grows heavier. Your knees ache when they used to glide. Your reflection, once so familiar, now pauses you. Who is this person with thinning hair, deepening lines, or eyes that once burned bright, but now carry a haze of fatigue? The betrayal isn't loud. It's the subtle shift in posture, the clothes that no longer fit the same, the breath that shortens not from sprinting, but from standing too quickly. And it's not just about age. Sometimes, the betrayal arrives early. A diagnosis, a trembling hand, a heart that skips not from love, but dysfunction. The body, once a loyal companion, begins to speak a different language, foreign, unpredictable, frightening. And yet, you are still in there, still you. The same thoughts, the same memories, the same soul. But the vessel, it resists, distorts, declines. "I don't recognize myself anymore," someone says quietly at the end of a long day. Their friend nods, equally lost. "Me neither. I still feel 20 in my head. But this," they gesture toward their body with a wry smile. "This feels like a costume I never picked." There's a strange grief in losing something that was never separate from you. How do you mourn your own skin? How do you learn to love a body that no longer reflects the self you carry inside? But here's the paradox. Even as your body falters, your awareness deepens. You notice more, the softness in others, the fragility in everything. Your steps may slow, but your perception sharpens. Pain brings patience. Fatigue brings stillness. And in that stillness, something stirs that's hard to name. A clarity, maybe even wisdom. You learn that identity isn't fixed to muscle or beauty. You are not your shoulders, your strength, your speed. You are the one who notices when those things begin to fade. You are the awareness watching the mirror, not the reflection itself. And perhaps that awareness is the only part of you that doesn't age, that doesn't fail, that doesn't betray. It's hard to accept, of course. The struggle is real. Some days, you'll want to scream at your own legs for aching, at your spine for folding, at your lungs for wheezing too soon. But then there are nights, quiet ones, when you sit with yourself in the dark and you remember you're still here, still breathing, still you. So breathe slowly now. This body, this fading frame, it is not your enemy. It is your story written in flesh. It is your journey in visible form. Let it tremble. Let it wrinkle. Let it change. And you, you remain, unshaken, aware, awake. The thought that no one will remember you. There's a quiet ache that visits you sometimes, not loud, not sharp, just a whisper behind your thoughts. What if no one remembers me? It arrives on birthdays, in old photographs, or in the pause after a good deed goes unnoticed. It sneaks in when you realize the names of your great-grandparents are barely a faded memory, if remembered at all. The truth is sobering. Most people, no matter how loved or vibrant, vanish from memory within 3 generations. Even names carved into stone grow weathered, their meaning lost to strangers who walk by without a second glance. Will it be like that for me too? One voice asks. I think so. Another responds, not unkindly. But maybe that's not a tragedy. Legacy is a beautiful lie we tell ourselves to anchor against time's tide. It promises that our pain, our joys, our efforts will echo long after we're gone. But even the most powerful empires become paragraphs. Even the most adored stars fade from history's gaze. Memory is fragile. It lives in stories passed down, in albums tucked in drawers, in the details someone chooses to repeat or forget. And yet, you're still here, breathing, laughing, hurting, being. Maybe it isn't remembrance that gives a life its worth. Maybe it's the way you held the hand of someone who was falling apart. Maybe it's the laughter you shared under a sky so vast it made you feel both tiny and infinite. Maybe it's the way you forgave someone, not because they deserved it, but because peace mattered more than pride. None of that may be remembered. And still, it shaped the world in some small, invisible way. A man once sat alone on a bench, watching the world move past. Sometimes I think I don't matter, he confessed. His friend replied, You matter because you're feeling that right now. That thought, that tenderness, that's real. That's alive. In the grand scale of the universe, every life is a flicker, but a flicker still gives off light. It still warms something. It still is. And maybe that's enough. To live fully, to love deeply, to cry honestly. Not for history, but for this moment. Not for legacy, but for truth. So release the need to be remembered. You are not a monument. You are a breath, a heartbeat, a single sunrise that will never happen again in quite the same way. And that is more than enough. Let go now. Not of meaning, but of the burden of permanence. You were never meant to be etched in stone. You were meant to feel, to notice, to be. The God that stops watching. For most of human history, we look to the heavens not only with wonder, but with hope. Hope that someone was watching. That beyond the cold of space, there was warmth, an eye, a presence, a judgment, or mercy. Children prayed before bed. Soldiers whispered to the sky in their final moments. The old clutched their hearts and begged to be remembered beyond death. There was something deeply anchoring about believing you were seen. Not by people who come and go, not by fleeting lovers or fading friends, but by something eternal. Something that watched you live, suffer, try, fail, rise again. But what happens when the sky grows silent? Some thinkers called it the death of God, though it wasn't a murder, but a quiet vanishing. Not the end of religion, but the erosion of certainty. The comfort of divine oversight was replaced by endless ambiguity. No clear path, no all-knowing witness, no guarantee that anyone or anything is keeping score. You might ask, isn't that freedom? To no longer feel the gaze of a cosmic parent, to act without the weight of eternal consequence, and yet, Something deep in the soul recoils, because being watched, in the spiritual sense, meant more than surveillance. It meant significance, a feeling that your heartbreak, your joy, your trembling efforts to be good mattered to something greater. When that disappears, you are left with a strange kind of silence, not just around you, but inside. A silence that asks, if I scream into the void, who hears me? If I do something kind, does it echo beyond this life or disappear with me? In a quiet cafe, one person stirs their coffee and says to their friend across the table, "Sometimes I wish I still believed, not for heaven, not for fear, just to feel seen." The friend nods, eyes lowered. "I know what you mean. It's like, when no one's watching, are you still you?" It's a haunting thought, but also, maybe, a beautiful one. Because if no divine being is watching, then every good deed you do is pure, not for reward, not for glory, but for its own quiet truth. You rescue a cat from the street not for applause in heaven, but because compassion still moves through you. You hold a stranger's hand in a hospital, not because you're being judged, but because you chose to show up when no one else did. Maybe that is the real test of humanity. To do good, create beauty, and live fully. Not because the stars are watching, but in spite of their silence. To find your own light in a sky that does not answer. So tonight, when you look up and feel that unsettling void, remember this: the stars may not speak. The sky may no longer whisper blessings or warnings, but it still shines. Cold, distant, ancient, but undeniably real. And maybe that is enough. Maybe you are the witness now, the one who sees and remembers and chooses what kind of person you'll be, even in the silence, especially in the silence. The desire that devours itself. Somewhere in the quiet corners of the mind, a small ember begins to glow. It whispers of more success, more love, more beauty, more peace. It doesn't shout, it tempts. It shows you a glimmer of what life could be, and suddenly, what is becomes unsatisfying. This is desire, not the healthy hunger of survival, but the endless ache of becoming. You chase, achieve, and then chase again. As soon as your hands close around one dream, your gaze shifts to another. The cycle spins. Wanting leads to striving, and striving never stops. Have you noticed how desire feels like movement, but rarely arrival? Like walking toward a horizon that recedes with every step. There is no final destination, only the illusion of one. You fall in love, but after the thrill fades, you wonder if there's someone even better. You get the job, and almost immediately a voice inside murmurs, "What's next?" Even peace becomes something to conquer, to grasp, to possess, until it slips through your fingers like smoke. Two friends sit together in a dim-lit kitchen after midnight. One stirs a cold cup of tea and sighs, "I don't even know what I want anymore. I just feel restless all the time." The other, eyes heavy with their own battle, replies, "Maybe we don't want things. Maybe we just want to stop wanting." Desire, in its purest form, seems to be the very fuel of life, what keeps the heart beating and the mind imagining. But when left unchecked, it becomes a fire that consumes from within. It doesn't ask you to burn brightly. It demands that you never stop burning. The paradox is cruel. You want something so badly because you believe it will make you whole. But the moment it arrives, the wholeness fades and the hunger remains. As if the wanting is more real than the having. Philosophers and mystics have long warned of this. The Buddha taught that craving is the root of suffering. Stoics spoke of tranquility born from needing nothing outside of virtue. And even modern minds, caught in consumer spirals and dopamine loops, feel the weight of always needing more, but rarely being more. So then, what is desire? A flame that lights the way, or a trap disguised as purpose? Maybe both. Maybe desire is not the enemy, but the relationship to it. When we cling, it owns us. When we notice it without worshiping it, we begin to reclaim peace. There is a strange kind of courage in stopping, in saying, "This moment is enough," in choosing to let contentment walk toward you instead of running endlessly after its shadow. That doesn't mean you give up on progress, dreams, or the beauty of growth. It means you stop mistaking arrival for happiness. Tonight, let go of reaching. Just breathe. Let the silence of enoughness settle around you like a warm blanket. The world may still spin, the mind may still whisper, but you, just for now, don't need to chase. And in that stillness, you may find something deeper than desire ever offered: peace. The child you left behind. There was a time, long before the world taught you how to sit still, how to speak politely, how to suppress the wild and the weird inside you, when you were simply you. A small, bright creature chasing light, asking questions that made no sense to grown-ups, dancing in the rain without wondering who was watching. That child, so alive, so untamed, so beautifully confused by the world, didn't vanish. But you did leave them behind. As years passed, that wonder had to be replaced with structure, schedules, expectations. You were praised for being responsible, for being strong, for knowing the right answer and doing the right thing. Somewhere between your first heartbreak and your last performance review, the child you once were learned to be quiet. Not because they stopped existing, but because you stopped listening. And yet, they still whisper. In the small moments, when your heart leaps unexpectedly at a song you forgot you loved, when a smell brings tears to your eyes and you don't know why, when you laugh so hard your stomach aches, and just for a second, there is no past or future, just joy. That's them, still in there, still waiting, still asking, "Do you remember me?" Sometimes we talk about growing up like it's an escape from foolishness. But what if that foolishness was actually wisdom in disguise? What if the child you were didn't need to be silenced, but needed to be protected? When we cut off that voice completely, something happens. We become efficient but empty, successful but numb. We lose the softness that once made life feel magical. And in doing so, we risk forgetting what it meant to feel fully. Can you truly know yourself if you've exiled the very part of you that first met the world without armor? Can you be whole if you've buried the part of you that once believed in everything, before heartbreak, before shame, before duty hardened your skin? One evening, in the hush between wakefulness and sleep, someone might appear to you, not as a ghost, but as memory embodied. A small version of you, barefoot and curious, holding a paper flower or a stick sword, asking no permission to be. What would you say to them? Would you apologize for leaving? Would you thank them for surviving in silence? Would you finally let them speak? There's no map back to childhood, but there is a door. It creaks open in dreams, in play, in tears, in forgiveness. Not to return to who you were, but to make room for all you are. So tonight, don't just chase sleep like another task on your checklist. Lie down with gentleness. Breathe as if each inhale is a lullaby for that forgotten part of you. You are not too old to be tender. You are not too late to remember. Let the child rest tonight. They never truly left. They are still with you, in dreams. waiting, watching, wondering if, just maybe, this time, you'll come home. The apocalypse that's already happened. There are apocalypses that come not with fire or flood, but with silence. No alarms, no explosions. Just a slow, creeping shift where everything familiar becomes unfamiliar. You wake up, and the world you knew is gone. But no one else seems to notice. No headline announces your loss. No siren screams for your sorrow. And yet, your world has ended. Sometimes, it begins with a goodbye. Not the dramatic kind, but the quiet closing of a door that was always left ajar. A breakup, a death, a betrayal. Or maybe it's something more subtle, a moment when the weight of truth finally becomes too heavy, and you feel yourself fracture under it. A version of you disappears, and nobody comes looking. We often imagine the end of the world as a grand spectacle, but the truth is, the end is deeply personal. It's not always a mushroom cloud on the horizon. It's the realization that someone will never come back, that a dream you once carried has been buried, that the place you used to call home no longer remembers your name. These are the quiet apocalypses, the invisible endings that no one else sees. And yet, here you are, still walking, still breathing, still trying to laugh at things that used to make you cry. It's strange, isn't it? To be the survivor of a world that only existed in your own heart. No medals, no rescue mission, just you, learning how to exist again in a landscape that feels foreign. I think I died that day, someone says in a hushed voice, years after the fact. Yeah, their friend replies, looking away, but you kept going. Only because I didn't know what else to do. Maybe that's what rebirth is. You see, the ashes of what ended still cling to you, not to torment you, but to remind you. That version of you died. But from that quiet grave, something else emerged. Someone else. Someone who now carries the memory, the scar, and perhaps even the strength. It's haunting to consider how many times a person can end and begin again, how many silent apocalypses one's soul can withstand. But maybe that's the hidden rhythm of life: creation, collapse, creation again. We do not come out unchanged, we come out rearranged, sometimes softer, sometimes sharper, but always more aware. So if you felt it, that eerie sense that something within you ended long before anyone noticed, you're not alone. That was your apocalypse, and you survived it. Let the ashes cool now. You don't have to rebuild what was. You're not meant to. You're meant to rise from it, carrying only what matters. The rest can stay buried. The end already came. You're living what came after. The forgiveness you'll never receive. There are apologies that echo into silence. You spoke the words. You meant every syllable. Maybe your voice cracked. Maybe your heart did too. But their eyes didn't soften. Their door stayed closed. And in that moment, something inside you fractured, not just from guilt, but from the sharp realization that not every apology is a key that unlocks healing. There's a myth we cling to, that if we just say we're sorry, all will be made right. But real life doesn't always follow that script. Sometimes people carry wounds too deep, pride too heavy, or pain too loud to hear the tenderness in your regret. They build walls around their suffering, and your words bounce off like rain on stone. You begin to ask yourself questions that don't have easy answers. Did I not say it right? Should I have said more or less? Was I too late? And beneath all of it, the aching thought you try not to face. What if they never forgive me? What if the thing you broke can't be mended? Not because you didn't try, but because they chose not to meet you in the space between. And still, you wake up every day. You breathe. You carry the shape of that wound like an invisible scar stitched into your spirit. You show up for others, even while a part of you feels undeserving. You smile sometimes, but it's a smile tinted with regret. And at night, in the quiet, you replay the memory, the moment you hurt them, the moment you apologized, and the moment they looked at you like a stranger. But here's something no one tells you. Forgiveness is not always a two-way street. There are roads that only you can walk. Roads where the person you need to face is yourself. Maybe the closure you seek from them is really the mercy you've been withholding from your own soul. Because deep down, there's a part of you that believes you don't deserve peace until they say you do. What if that's not true? What if the greatest act of maturity is realizing that some forgiveness will never come and still choosing not to punish yourself forever? Not because you're excusing what happened, not because you've forgotten the pain it caused, but because you are human, and brokenness is not a death sentence. You are more than your worst moment, and you are allowed to evolve past it. In a quiet conversation between two old friends, one once said, "What if they never speak to me again?" The other replied, "Then let the silence teach you how to be gentle with yourself, because guilt can't live in a place where grace has moved in. Maybe they won't call. Maybe they've rewritten the story of you in a way you can't control. Maybe, in their world, you're the villain. And maybe you can't fix that, but you can choose not to become it. Tonight, as you sit with the ache, ask yourself one thing. If they never forgive me, can I still choose to forgive myself? Can I carry this sorrow without letting it consume me? Can I become a better person, not because they demanded it, but because I decided I'm worth the effort? The truth is, what you need most may never come from them, but it can come from you. So take a breath. Place your hand over your chest. Feel the life still moving through you. Offer yourself grace now, the kind you once begged for, the kind only you can truly give. The thought you'll regret forever. There are thoughts that echo louder than any voice we've ever heard, thoughts we didn't ask for, yet can't seem to silence. One of them is regret. It doesn't arrive with a bang or a scream. It creeps in softly, like a broken record skipping in the background of your life. At first, you try to ignore it. You go about your day, pretending it's nothing more than static. But then, in the quiet moments, in the in-between spaces of sleep and solitude, it returns. A choice you didn't make, a word you didn't say, a door you didn't close, or one you shut too quickly. And suddenly, you're not here anymore. You're back there, replaying it again and again. Regret is not nostalgia. It doesn't come from love of the past. It comes from the wish to rewrite it. It's a longing to reach back in time with the wisdom you now carry and whisper to your younger self, "Don't do it," or "Do it differently." But time is deaf to that kind of plea. And so, the loop begins. What if I had stayed? What if I had left sooner? What if I had said yes or no? There's a strange intimacy to regret. It becomes part of your identity, like a scar you trace absent-mindedly. You don't love it, but you know it. And in some twisted way, it comforts you, because it proves you cared, that you tried, that you were human enough to get it wrong. Again and again, you might tell yourself that if only you could go back, you would change it. But would you? Really? Sometimes, regret is just the shadow of who you became. A reminder that the person you are today exists because of the very thing you wish you could erase. Without that mistake, maybe you would have stayed blind. Without that goodbye, maybe you'd still be trapped. Pain is a cruel teacher, but it's honest. It doesn't lie about the cost of ignorance. It demands your growth, not your comfort. A quiet conversation once unfolded between two friends sitting under a dim kitchen light. "I still think about her," one whispered. "Do you wish you'd done it differently?" the other asked. He paused. "Number, I just wish I could have become who I am now, without hurting her in the process." And that's the heart of regret. Not just the action, but the impact. You mourn who you were, but also who they were before you touched their story. And that ache doesn't go away easily. But here's the gentle truth. The record doesn't have to keep skipping. You can lift the needle. You can let the loop go silent, not by forgetting, but by honoring what it taught you. Regret will visit. It's part of being alive, but it doesn't have to move in. You are not defined by the past. You are shaped by how you carry it. So tonight, listen closely. The music of now is still playing, and it's beautiful in a way the past never could be, because it's still unfolding, because you are still unfolding. The smile you gave while dying inside. You smiled. Maybe it was at work, passing someone in the hallway, or when someone said, "You're so strong," and your lips curled upward because that's what strong people do. You smiled because if you didn't, something in you might scream. That smile, the one people praised, the one that bought you peace for another minute, wasn't a lie exactly. It was a survival mechanism, the kind that's built into us the way your heart keeps beating, even when it's tired. "I'm fine." You said it like a password. You said it like it could keep the storm outside the door. Across the table, someone laughs. You nod along, but your chest feels like a theater where grief performs behind closed curtains. There's a tear running somewhere inside, but you don't let it show. Not tonight. A man at a train station once whispered, "You look like someone who listens more than they speak." And you smiled again, just to be polite. But inside, 1,000 things you wanted to say had already curled up in a corner, cold and afraid of their own sound. Why do we do it? Why do we perform resilience like it's a stage show no one asked us to audition for? Because the world rewards the mask. That's the unspoken deal. If you look okay, you must be okay. If you say, "I'm fine," then no one digs deeper. It's safer that way, for them, and maybe even for you. But night has a way of peeling those masks away, doesn't it? A woman on a quiet park bench once murmured to her friend, "I laughed the whole dinner. Then I cried the entire walk home." Her friend only replied, "Yeah, that's called holding it together." We laugh while we crumble because tears are inconvenient. We joke while breaking because silence makes people uncomfortable. And so we learn to wear our pain like perfume, present but never obvious. But the body knows. It stores every swallowed scream in your shoulders. Every unspoken need tightens your jaw. Every time you said, "It's nothing," your chest remembered. How many versions of you have you buried beneath polite nods? How many real moments have been lost to the ritual of pretending? Maybe you were the one who held the door for others, even when your hands were shaking. Maybe you lent your charger to someone on the subway and smiled like your phone wasn't already at 5%. Little acts that said, "I'm still here." But you weren't. Not completely. In those moments, you were splitting quietly, and no one knew. Because you didn't let them. Because letting them might have meant falling apart in front of witnesses. But now, in this soft, dark place, there are no witnesses, no need for applause, No one's waiting for the next line. Here, you can stop performing. You can admit that the smile was armor, that the joke was a way to breathe through the ache, that "I'm fine" was a way to say, "I don't want to burden you." Someone once said, there are two types of people, those who cry when they're hurt and those who clean the entire kitchen. Both are grieving. Both are surviving. So if you've been scrubbing your feelings spotless, folding them into polite sentences, rinsing your voice of anything messy, know this: you don't need to anymore. Not here. Not now. The world behind your eyes is safe to visit. The ache is safe to name. The part of you that smiled while dying inside is finally allowed to speak. And what it says might surprise you. It might not be a scream. It might be a whisper that says, "Thank you for making it this far." Let the quiet hold you now. Let the truth breathe. Let sleep take the mask from your hands. You were always more than the performance. And tonight, even in the dark, you're still enough. The question that falls asleep with you. It doesn't knock. It doesn't shout. It simply arrives, soft as breath, curling at the edge of your pillow. A question that doesn't want to be solved. It just wants to be near you, to stay, quietly, like the warmth left in a sweater someone once loved you in. You feel it some nights, not as a weight, but as a whisper. It doesn't keep you awake like worry does. It waits with you, a shape in the dark that doesn't ask to be understood, just accepted, like the way your hands know the light switch without thinking, like the way you sigh, sometimes, without knowing why. Do you ever feel like some things aren't meant to be answered? That's what she asked him once, leaning over the armrest during a bus ride, city lights flickering across her face. He didn't respond, not because he didn't have thoughts, but because some moments deserve silence more than explanation. And maybe that's the thing. We were taught that all questions exist to be solved, that discomfort demands a cure, that closure is a finish line we should run toward. But what if the mind isn't a courtroom? What if not all thoughts are trials to win? There are thoughts that circle like wind around an old tree. You hear them, you feel them, but trying to grab them is like trying to hold steam in your fist. So instead, you sit with them, let them pass through, let them stay a while if they wish. A child once asked, "Where do the stars go during the day?" The mother smiled. They're still there, just waiting for night to come back. Maybe some questions are like that, not gone, just resting until you're ready to meet them again. You don't have to wrestle with meaning tonight. No need to reach for the right answer. It's okay if the question remains open, like a window crack to let the air move. A little space for wonder to breathe. A man once stood in a checkout line, paused, then stepped back and said, "You go ahead." I just remembered, I don't really need this today. And the person behind him blinked, unsure whether it was kindness or confusion. But maybe it doesn't matter. Not everything we do needs a reason as long as it feels like relief. Some people ask, "What's the point?" But there's something beautiful in asking and letting the echo respond in its own time. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not ever. But still, there's peace in the asking, like a note held too long in a song, not because it leads somewhere, but because it feels good to stay. Let your mind ease into that space now, where thought is not duty and knowing is not the goal. Let the need to understand soften at the edges, blur like ink in water. The question is still there. It hasn't left you, but it isn't demanding. It's just lying beside you, like a friend who doesn't talk, like an old lamp that glows but never blinds. You may drift off before it speaks. That's okay. The question doesn't mind. It just wanted to be here. And you let it. So rest now. The night will hold it for you. The star that forgot it was fire. Somewhere above the noise of life, a star burns, quietly, endlessly. It doesn't roar, it doesn't beg to be seen. It simply exists. Not for praise, not for purpose, just burning. That's the thing about stars. They forget. Not because they're weak or broken, but because they shine so long, so faithfully, that even their fire begins to feel ordinary. Do you ever feel like you're just functioning? The question floats between two voices in the dark, a whisper in the space between sleep and waking. Yeah, the other replies softly, like I'm doing everything right, but I'm not really here for any of it. They pause. The silence says more than either of them can. Stars don't know they're stars. They just shine. And we, creatures of morning alarms and evening emails, we do the same. Wake up. Do the thing. Help someone. Solve a problem. Go to bed. Repeat. Eventually, even passion becomes routine. Even fire becomes lukewarm. There was a time, maybe, when you burned. You remember that, don't you? The first love that made your chest tremble. The idea that lit your eyes up. That dream that made sleep feel like a distraction. But now, maybe, it's all just background light. Still there, but faint. Not gone, just forgotten. They speak again, the two voices. One is trying to remember. I used to want more, one says. I used to feel like I was becoming something. The other nods. And now, I feel like I'm maintaining something that already slipped away. It's not sadness, really. It's weariness. The kind that comes from giving your light to the world without noticing how dim it's grown for you. The kind of forgetting that doesn't happen overnight, but over years. Repetition is a thief. It doesn't steal with violence. It steals with familiarity. You don't realize it until it's gone. The spark, the hunger, the pulse behind your purpose. You keep giving light to others. You become warmth for those around you. You make things better, brighter, easier for everyone else. But when was the last time you burned for yourself? Let's pause now. Not to fix it, not to force a flame back into your chest, but to remember. Even cold stars once ignited galaxies. Even tired souls once danced beneath their own light. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are a star that forgot it was fire. Tonight, as the world softens into sleep, let yourself drift back into the sky of your own memory. Watch the sparks you left behind. They're still out there, waiting to be seen again. And maybe, just maybe, one of them still remembers your name. The civilization that never arrives. She turned to him, resting her cheek on the warm curve of his shoulder. Do you ever think, maybe we're the only ones? He blinked slowly, eyes half lost in the ceiling's soft shadows. Only ones where? In the whole thing, the stars, the dark, all of it. A pause. The question drifted between them, heavier than silence, lighter than breath. Out there, beyond this fragile cocoon of sleep and sighs, spins a universe too enormous for language. Galaxies drift like snow in a void without direction, without anchor. The Fermi paradox presses against the mind like cold glass. If space is so vast and life so statistically likely, where are the others? Why have no lights blinked back at us across the dark? No footsteps in the galactic hallways, no voices through the static, no echo from the deep. It's a silence not of absence, but of delay, as if a party started in another room, but we were never told where. Maybe no one else lit their beacon. Maybe everyone else burned too bright, too fast, and faded before we arrived. Or maybe we're too early. She asked again, softer now. What if they just haven't reached this part yet? He whispered back. Or what if they're here, but we don't know how to listen? In the quiet that followed, the thought stretched wider than the walls. There's a peculiar ache in preparing for something that never shows up. A table set for a guest who never knocks. We build satellites like invitations, scan frequencies like hopeful glances. Each failed signal return is not just data. It's a whisper of loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being unwanted, but from being misunderstood across dimensions too vast to bridge. We are a candle in a cathedral so enormous it has no walls. The flame is warm, yes, but its light is swallowed before it touches another. You begin to wonder if anyone ever built cathedrals on other worlds, or if this was always going to be a one-planet performance. The boy in the park looked up once, just before the clouds rolled in. He said to no one, "If they come, I hope they like music." No one answered, but that didn't stop him from humming, because maybe that's what we're supposed to do. Human. Hope. Beam signals into nowhere, not because we're sure someone is listening, but because it helps us remember we're still here, still trying, still glowing against the dark. And in that trying, a new question forms, not about aliens or science or space, but about us. What kind of civilization are we becoming while waiting for another? Are we shaping ourselves with patience or with fear? Are we sending out compassion or just code? Would we be ready if something ever replied? He turned his head slightly, eyes half closed. If they never come, he said, maybe the point wasn't to be found. Maybe the point was to learn how to keep reaching. She didn't respond, but her hand slipped into his under the blanket. Quiet, soft, human. So let the silence settle now. Let it spread like the sky over a sleeping city. The kind of stillness that doesn't press, but holds. The absence of sound isn't always empty. Sometimes, it's the universe waiting to be heard in a different way. And if nothing ever arrives, that doesn't mean nothing was there. Only that we may not yet know how to hear it. Sleep now. The stars are still watching, even if they never speak. The play with no audience. You wake up, stretch into your skin, walk out into the stage of your life. You speak your lines, improvise your hopes, stumble through your regrets. You love someone, you lose something, you try again. And in the quiet corners of your mind, a question forms like fog. Who is this all for? There's no standing ovation waiting in the kitchen after a long day. No spotlight warming your skin when you choose kindness over spite. No orchestra swells when you finally forgive someone who never said sorry. And still, you act, you move, you live. Do you ever feel like you're talking into a void? One voice whispers, "Every day." The other responds with a smile that doesn't need an answer. Maybe we were taught that someone must be watching for our actions to matter, that life is a stage, and what we do only gains value under observation. But what if the truth is far quieter than that? What if existence isn't a performance, but a presence? Not something that needs to be witnessed, but something that simply is. There are moments you laugh alone in a room, not because anyone's there to echo your joy, but because your soul needed to crack open the silence. There are memories you carry not to share them, but because they are pieces of who you are. There's a kind of courage in continuing the play, even when the seats are empty. Would you still write if no one ever read a word? I think? Yes, maybe especially then. Validation is a strange mirror. It shows us who we appear to be, but rarely who we are. The danger isn't that no one's watching. It's that we forget how to exist without being seen. We sculpt ourselves for applause, forgetting that applause is just noise. But presence is eternal. It is the heartbeat behind each line spoken with sincerity. It is the warmth in a gesture no one notices but you. The question, then, is not whether others are watching. It's whether you are. Whether you're awake in your own story, or simply performing someone else's script. Do you think people ever live just for themselves? I think it's not selfish to do so. I think it's sacred. There's freedom in shedding the audience. Freedom in knowing that your kindness doesn't need a witness to be real. That your grief doesn't need acknowledgement to be valid. That your love, your art, your silence, none of it needs to be performed. So take a bow now, not because someone claps, not because anyone asked, but because you showed up, because the curtain never needed to rise for your scene to begin, and because the next chapter isn't waiting for anyone else's permission. It begins when you say, quietly but surely, I'm here. No one may be watching, but you are, and that's enough. The memory you never had. A scent drifts through the night air. You don't recognize it, but your chest tightens anyway. Something deep inside stirs, as if it remembers something you never lived. A hallway lined with faded photographs that were never taken. A song you hum without knowing where you first heard it. A voice that says your name in a tone so familiar, yet it doesn't belong to anyone you've ever met. Nostalgia, we assume, belongs to the things that happened. But there's another kind, softer, stranger. A yearning not for what was, but for what could have been. Some call it déjà vu. Others call it dreaming. But what if it's neither? What if your body is storing blueprints of memories you never lived, but somehow still felt? Did you grow up here? A man once asked me while we stood waiting at a bus stop, the kind with no shelter and a flickering light. I shook my head. Number never been here before. He smiled. That's funny. You looked like you belonged. There are neighborhoods you've never walked through that still feel like home. People you've never loved, but mourn like lost relatives. Nights you miss, even though they never existed. That's the mystery. Your soul carries postcards from cities it's never visited. The brain doesn't always catalog truth. It catalogs meaning. A story told at bedtime when you were 4 could become a myth that tints your dreams. A film you saw at 16 might shape the outline of your ideal life. And sometimes you build entire emotional worlds around things that never actually happened, but felt so true at the time. You held on to them anyway. So here you are, lying in bed with a memory so vivid you could swear it happened. A warm kitchen, light rain, someone humming while cooking, their voice cracked just enough to make it real. But there's no name, no timeline, just warmth and ache. A woman once told me she missed a dog she never owned. She dreamed of its name, Peach. She could describe the fur, the way it chased butterflies, the exact pitch of its bark. I know it doesn't make sense, she said, eyes soft. But I miss her like she was mine. Maybe memory isn't about chronology. Maybe it's a collage of what your heart needed, patched together from scraps of stories, echoes of places, and shadows of dreams. Maybe your most meaningful memories aren't even yours. You sit at a table in a cafe you've never been to before. The waiter pours water and says, "You always ask for lemon, right?" You blink, confused. but somehow it feels correct. Sometimes it's not about whether it happened, it's about whether it feels like it did. And in that feeling, you find guidance. A compass without coordinates, but still trustworthy. So let go of needing it to be real. Let the ache live without explanation. That pang in your chest, the strange comfort in a stranger's voice, the joy that comes from nowhere. That's real enough. Your body knows what your mind forgot. And tonight, as you drift deeper, you might find yourself in a memory not your own. A playground with purple slides, the smell of toast with honey, someone waving at you from a window you've never looked through. Smile back, because whether it's real or not, your heart remembers. Now, breathe, gently. Let that map unfold inside you. No roads, no names, just feeling, and you can follow it, even with your eyes closed. The wish that became a world. There's a strange stillness before the beginning of anything, before a decision is made, before a seed breaks open underground, before light folds itself into stars. In that stillness lives something soft, nearly invisible, a pressure, a yearning, a wish. Maybe it wasn't spoken out loud, maybe it wasn't even conscious, but it moved, and in moving, it created. You lie there, and the thought stirs beneath your ribs. What if the world didn't begin with an explosion, but with a longing? Not a desire with words or names, but a silent ache in the fabric of the void, curling like breath in winter. What if the first moment was less like thunder and more like a whisper that had waited too long to be heard? Do you believe the world was born from nothing? A voice cuts gently through the haze, the kind of question that doesn't need answering. I don't know, comes the reply, almost sleepy, but I think something wanted to be seen. That's all it takes sometimes, isn't it? To be seen, to be known. A simple wish, carried gently enough, can bend the shape of a life. You've made them too. Not grand declarations, not shouted into the wind, but quiet ones. The wish to be held, to matter, to escape, to start over. Even the wish to rest for just one night without carrying the weight of everything undone. And maybe those wishes didn't end when they were ignored. Maybe they became something else, routes your life quietly followed, choices you made without knowing why, people you stayed near, not because they were safe, but because something in you wanted to believe they could be. I think I wished for peace once, someone murmurs beside you, but I kept chasing storms, thinking I could fix them. That's still a kind of wish, the other says, almost smiling. Just pointed at the wrong sky, because intention doesn't always arrive dressed as clarity. Sometimes it walks in as confusion, or obsession, or the need to prove something to people who forgot you long ago. But underneath all that noise was a wish. Even the Big Bang, if we were to stretch poetry into science, could have been a longing. The kind that doesn't come from logic, but from the hunger to become. A trembling note in the silence of whatever was before. A primal yes to existence before anything had the courage to echo back. So if the cosmos itself bloomed from a desire to expand, what about you? What have you longed for so deeply that it reshaped the floor beneath you? The path you thought you'd never take? The version of yourself you almost didn't recognize, but became anyway? Maybe your entire life is built on old wishes, ones you've forgotten, ones you still carry like folded notes in your pocket. And now, as your breathing slows, as your thoughts soften at the edges, one more wish curls quietly in your chest, not to be answered, not even to be fulfilled, just to be felt. That's enough. A pause, a quiet, and then, if my dreams really do shape things, a voice wonders, does that mean I need to be more careful with what I wish for? The other voice doesn't answer right away. Then it replies gently, maybe, or maybe you just need to listen to them better. So let's drift now, into the soft place where dreams don't beg to be believed, where the world you want might already be unfolding beneath your eyelids. Let's not ask for it. Let's not name it. Let's just walk toward it quietly, as if we're already home. And if sleep catches you in the middle of that thought, that's okay. Wishes often do their best work in silence. The compass that points inward. It starts with a whisper beneath your ribs, not a voice, not a demand, just the quiet tug of something asking, have you looked inside lately? Not in a dramatic way, just softly, the way dusk turns the sky without asking permission. Maybe that's what this whole journey was about. Not conquest, not arrival, but return. A young woman on a quiet bench in a train station once asked the man beside her, do you ever feel like you're running, but not away from something, just around it? He paused, the kind of pause that has weight. Sometimes I think I'm chasing answers I already have. I just haven't learned how to listen to them. They didn't speak again. They didn't need to. We're taught that growth lies in distance, that further means wiser. Climb the mountain, fly to the other side of the world, accumulate badges, skills, experiences. But in every myth ever told, the hero eventually circles back. The dragon is slain, the road conquered, and yet, the real reward is never the gold. It's the knowing, the mirror that finally shows a face that feels familiar. And sometimes, life peels you, one heartbreak at a time, one goodbye too early, one dream that didn't become what you needed, until all that's left is something honest, something quiet, something you. There was a boy once who lost everything, family, home, even his name. He wandered for years, asking everyone he met, do you know where I belong? Some said, here. Others, there. But no answer felt like home. Until one morning, watching sunlight drift through the fog, he stopped asking. He closed his eyes, and in that silence, for the first time, he heard it. Not an answer, but a pulse. Not a direction, but a warmth. It wasn't where, it was who. Because the real compass doesn't point north, it points inward, and it doesn't shout, it hums. It says, this way, not with words, but with ease, with peace, with breath. Not because the road is smooth, but because you stop pretending to be someone you're not. You walk not toward glory, but toward congruence. In the middle of a crowded cafe, someone once said gently across a small chipped table, I used to think I had to prove I was enough. Now I'm just trying to remember I already am. The other person smiled, stirring their coffee. That's the hardest kind of remembering, isn't it? So if your feet are tired, and your story feels scattered, and you're wondering whether you missed the turn, you didn't. You were never off track. You were peeling, unlearning, listening. Maybe it's not a journey forward anymore. Maybe now, it's a walk home. So rest here. Let the compass settle in your chest. You don't have to ask it where to go. It already knows. Close your eyes if they feel heavy. The next step doesn't require sight, only trust. And trust doesn't mean certainty. It just means softness, a willingness to feel your way through. The path ahead is quiet now. No fanfare, no applause, only the sound of your breath and the gentle echo of something sacred returning to itself. Let's take that step inward now. No map, no rush, just the hush of becoming. The bubble that contains infinity. It begins with something so small you almost don't notice it. A child blows through a ring and a bubble forms, wobbling, trembling, barely holding together. And yet inside that thin shimmer, the entire sky appears. The clouds curve across its glossy skin. The sun refracts into halos. Even your own reflection, distorted and strange, ripples across its surface. All of it, held inside a sphere the size of your fingertip. How is it that something so delicate can contain everything? There's something quietly sacred about that contradiction. We tend to think of infinity as something enormous, galaxies, oceans, eternities. But what if it's not? What if infinity doesn't announce itself with thunder, but whispers from a bubble? A moment, a breath, a memory that returns without warning in the middle of the night. One evening, two people sit on a balcony as twilight folds across the sky. "Do you ever feel," she asks, watching the last light flicker on the horizon, "like the biggest truths hide in the smallest things?" He smiles, hands her a glass of water, and says, "All the time. A sip of tea, a glance, a second of silence before a laugh. It's like time slows down in those moments and expands." "Exactly," she whispers, "like when you're about to say something important, but the quiet says it for you." The bubble isn't strong. One gust of wind, one accidental touch, and it's gone. And yet, while it floats, it becomes a vessel for everything it sees, a mirror to the infinite. In the same way, your mind, so vulnerable to hurt and time, can still hold entire universes within it. You think of a person, and suddenly they live again. You hear a song, and you're 16. You close your eyes, and a memory spills open like a dream you forgot you had. Maybe this is the mystery we keep missing, that the vastness we search for is already inside the fragile things we overlook. The bubble, the blink, the sigh, the mind that drifts while the body stays still, the quiet ache you carry while smiling through the day. We think we need to chase meaning across mountains and stars, but maybe all we ever needed to do was pause and look more closely at the shimmer. "Do you think it ever knows it's about to pop?" she asks, still watching the sky. He tilts his head. "Maybe that's what makes it beautiful. Knowing it won't last makes it pay attention while it's here." "Maybe that's what we should do too," she says. "So let yourself float for a while. Let your thoughts stretch and bend like the curved light inside a bubble. Let the smallness of this moment expand into something immeasurable. Because the truth is, what holds you isn't always what lasts forever. Sometimes it's what reminds you how precious even a second can be." And now, gently, we drift to the next thought, carried by a shimmer that holds the sky. The fog that remembers its shape. You don't have to be far from truth to feel lost. Sometimes it's not distance, it's timing. Your body arrives in a place your mind hasn't caught up to yet, like opening a familiar door and suddenly forgetting why you came in. There's a pause, soft, uncertain, familiar, a fog, but not the dangerous kind. Not the kind that blinds you, the kind that pauses the world just long enough to hear yourself breathe again. A man once whispered to a stranger at the train station, "Do you ever feel like you're right where you're supposed to be, but still misplaced somehow?" And the stranger replied with a gentle nod, "All the time. Like my mind's still waiting for the rest of me to arrive." That's the feeling we don't talk about often enough, the space between knowing and becoming, the stillness that looks like confusion, but is actually memory taking its time to return. Like fog trying to remember it was once rain. It hasn't forgotten. It just hasn't landed yet. Clarity, you see, doesn't always burst in like sunlight. Sometimes it waits, quietly, patiently, behind the veil of not yet knowing. And the mind? It rehearses. It replays. It stands in the fog and tries to trace shapes with fingertips that can't quite feel the edges. There's a little girl in a hallway. She stops walking because she can't remember what her mom told her to bring. She frowns, stands still, and listens. Not for words, but for the echo of a memory that hasn't formed. It's not failure. It's not forgetting. It's the in-between. The doorway, not the wall. Maybe that's what confusion really is. Not a dead end. A doorway with no handle, but an open frame. You don't push through it. You walk with it. You walk with yourself. One man told me he quit his job not because he had a better one lined up, but because every time he sat at that desk, he felt like he was watching someone else pretend to be him. He said, "I didn't know who I was anymore, but I knew that wasn't it." The fog wasn't fear. It was honesty arriving before the explanation. He just had to wait for the rest to catch up. Sometimes your emotions lead before your logic can follow. You cry without knowing why. You feel heavy, but not broken. You speak slowly, not because you're tired, but because your words are still forming from feelings that haven't yet found language. Let yourself be there. Let yourself pause. You don't need to define the fog to walk through it. You don't need to understand the shape of things to be shaped by them. It's okay not to know yet. It's okay to be still while everything within you shifts and stretches and softens. You're not failing. You're becoming. A woman at the grocery store dropped her keys today and didn't bend to pick them up right away. She just stared at them, as if the act of bending down would commit her to the day she hadn't decided to be in yet. Eventually, a boy handed them to her and smiled. She smiled back, and that somehow was enough to move again. So let this mist wrap gently around your thoughts, not to hide them, but to hold them until they remember where they came from. And if your mind still feels slow, still a little distant, let it be. You are here, and the rest of you is on its way. Sleep if you need. Drift if you can. The fog remembers its shape, and so will you. The string that tied you here. There is something soft, nearly imperceptible, that keeps you here. Not in this room, not in this city. Here, in this moment, in this fragile existence. You may not remember agreeing to stay. You might never have spoken the words aloud, or even formed them in thought. But still, something was tied. A string, delicate yet unbreakable, loops around your soul and fastens you gently to this life. Do you ever feel like you're here because of something unspoken? I do. Sometimes it feels like I'm waiting for a reason to surface, like I owe someone a promise I forgot. Yeah, like there's an invisible agreement keeping us upright when everything else is unraveling. We often think life is held together by the loud things, decisions, declarations, dramatic turns. But more often, it's the quiet choices that anchor us. A look we shared with someone years ago, a whispered prayer before sleep, a night we didn't give up, even though we wanted to. These are the knots on that invisible thread. They don't flash or shout, but they hold. Maybe the thread was knotted in childhood during that one moment when someone believed in you, and it changed the shape of your future without either of you knowing. Maybe it was formed in pain, forged during a season when your only accomplishment was survival. Or maybe, just maybe, it was tied before you were even born, a spiritual signature signed in a language you've forgotten but still feel humming beneath your ribs. Sometimes you feel it tug. On hard days, it feels like it's pulling you forward, like it knows something you don't. On quiet nights, it draws your attention inward, as if the thread is stitched into memory and meaning both. And when you ask yourself why you're still here, why you still try, still hope, still breathe despite the weight, you can't explain it, not logically, but something holds, something believes. What if that string isn't keeping us tied down, but keeping us tethered to meaning? Then maybe we're not lost after all, just being gently guided back to ourselves. You don't have to understand the thread. You don't need to see where it leads. Just hold it. Let it hum softly in your palms. Let it remind you that you belong here, not by accident, not by force, but by some quiet necessity the universe hasn't finished revealing. Close your eyes now. Feel that string, light as breath, pulling you toward a deeper truth. Let it lead. Let it carry. Let it be enough. The question that falls asleep with you. Some thoughts don't leave when the lights go out. They don't scream. They whisper. A gentle nudge behind your closed eyes. A breath brushing your collarbone. Sleep isn't the end of thinking. It's just the mind changing dialects. The sentences soften. The grammar dissolves. And what's left? A kind of dream language. One where memory becomes fog and questions learn how to hum. Do you ever fall asleep mid-thought? Every night. And sometimes I wake up still finishing the same sentence. This is not a sign of restlessness. It's a quiet ritual the brain knows well. While the body slackens and the world grows still, the mind keeps stitching, threading together pieces of the day, feelings from last year, fragments of some movie you half-watched 3 months ago. And in the center of it all, a question, not sharp or demanding, just there. Like, did I say the right thing? Or, why do I feel loneliest after being surrounded by people? Sometimes even softer. What if I'm not wrong, just misunderstood? But these aren't questions for solving. They're not keys. They're lullabies disguised as uncertainty. In a quiet room, one voice said, "I don't need an answer tonight. I just want to know that the question still matters." The other replied, "Then maybe that's the answer, that you still care." There's a beauty in not knowing, in letting go of the urge to nail truth to the wall. Questions like these don't crave closure. They crave space, softness. They're not waiting to be solved. They're waiting to be held. Have you ever asked something in your mind, not to get clarity, but to feel less alone? You might say to yourself before drifting off, "If no one's watching, does my sadness still count?" And the silence answers, not with words, but with presence. Because some questions don't echo back. They stay. They curl up beside you and breathe slow. They don't pull. They don't press. They just stay. And that's enough. There's a strange comfort in that, like falling asleep beside someone you don't need to explain yourself to. No performance, no conclusion, just you and a thought, resting in the dark. "You know," one voice whispered while the fan hummed in the background, "I used to think sleep was a retreat. And now I think it's the only place I get to ask things without pretending I already know the answer." Sleep does not erase the mind, it softens it. Think of a stone left overnight in a stream, its edges smoothed not by force, but by the gentle persistence of quiet. That's your question. And you? You're the river that holds it. So if something lingers tonight, don't chase it out. Let it sit, let it flicker, let it fade. Not every question needs a reply. Some just want a room. And now, in this stillness, there is room. There is breath. There is time. Let the question rest. The night is more than darkness. It's shelter, and it will hold it for you. The whole that holds everything. Somewhere in the sky, beyond the veil of stars, there's a presence that neither shines nor speaks. A silence so vast it bends the rules of the universe around itself. They call it a black hole, but maybe that's the wrong name. Not because it's incorrect, but because it's incomplete. A hole is something we fear falling into. But what if this one holds instead of devours? Did you know? She asked, pulling her jacket tighter as the wind nipped at her collar. That black holes don't just destroy, they store. He looked up from his coffee, quiet for a beat. You mean like cosmic closets? She smiled. More like vaults. Everything goes in, light, time, matter. But nothing is truly lost, just changed. We think of emptiness as the absence of meaning, the end, the void. But sometimes the most powerful things in the universe are the ones that don't speak. A black hole doesn't shine, doesn't explain. It simply pulls, holds, transforms. And maybe, so do you. There are moments in life when your silence becomes a gravity, when words don't form, when people drift away, when you sit in your own presence and feel like the edges of your being are curling inward. You may call that depression, loneliness, emptiness. But what if it's the beginning of metamorphosis? A seed in the dark doesn't know it will become a tree. It just waits. Wrapped in stillness, it breaks, quietly, underground. It disintegrates, in order to grow. Do you ever feel like you're folding in on yourself? He asked softly. She didn't look up, just kept drawing circles in her notebook. Every Tuesday. Sometimes Thursdays too. He laughed. And Friday nights? She paused. Friday nights are for collapsing completely, then calling it transformation. We joke to keep from crying, but within those jokes live slivers of truth. That collapse isn't always loss. That silence isn't always absence. That the darkest parts of us may not be pits. We might just be processing. Maybe your sadness is a chamber, a room inside you that doesn't destroy, but refines. Maybe your stillness isn't stagnation, but the recalibration of a soul that's been running on empty. Maybe the moments when you feel least human are the ones in which you're becoming something more. It's a strange thing to trust what you cannot see. Stranger still to believe that the things we mourn might simply be changing shape behind some curtain of perception. But faith, in its quietest form, sounds a lot like letting go without needing proof. What if the worst parts of me are just the beginning of something I can't see yet? Then maybe, she replied, closing her eyes, you're not broken, just bending light. And if there is a black hole within you, a center you can't explain, a pull you can't resist, let's not rush to patch it up or label it. Let it exist. Let it teach. Let it reshape you. Because not all darkness is empty, and not every disappearance is a death. So tonight, don't fear the hole. Drift toward it, slowly, not to vanish, but to change. What you thought was the end may be the vault of your next beginning. Let's drift closer now, not to be swallowed, but to be reshaped. And if your eyes grow heavy, it's okay to let go. Sleep is not surrender. It's a doorway. We'll still be here, in the silence between thoughts, in the space where meaning begins again. The moon that watches you back. The moon doesn't say anything. It never has. It just hangs there, anchored in the velvet hush of night, quiet, silver, unmoving. And yet, you've felt it, haven't you? That strange comfort, like something is there with you, watching. Not in a threatening way, but like a silent companion that doesn't ask you to be anything, just present. Two people sit on a bench by a quiet lake. One of them glances up and whispers, "Do you ever feel like the moon knows things you don't say out loud?" The other nods, not taking their eyes off the reflection on the water. Yeah, like it saw the version of me that cried in the car last night and didn't look away. Maybe that's why we've always written poems about it, called it a muse, a lover, a mirror, a god. We knew it couldn't hear us, and yet we still talked to it because it never needed to answer. Just being there was enough. In its stillness, it held something human, something listening. The moon has no eyes, but somehow it sees. Not with gaze, but with presence. The kind of presence that doesn't interrupt, that doesn't try to fix you, that doesn't flinch when you feel too much or say too little. The kind of presence that says, "I won't leave, even if you have nothing left to give." It's odd, isn't it? The way a rock floating in space could feel more reliable than the people we've trusted. The way its silent orbit becomes more predictable than human promises. It will wax. It will wane. It will disappear and return. No excuses, no apologies, just cycles, just truth. Late at night, when your thoughts coil around themselves and nothing seems to make sense, maybe you find yourself looking out the window. Maybe you're not looking at the moon, but you're looking for something. For the quiet kind of recognition that doesn't ask for performance. For something that simply notices you are alive. One woman sat on a rooftop in silence, coffee cold in her hand. She hadn't spoken to anyone all day. And still, "There you are," she whispered, glancing up, as if the sky had been waiting for her to return, as if nothing was too late. What if your existence doesn't need to be celebrated to be meaningful? What if being witnessed, not validated, is the real medicine? The cosmos doesn't cheer or clap, it just surrounds. It receives, it reflects. And somehow, that's enough. You don't have to earn this kind of attention. You don't have to be funny or strong or wise. You just have to be. And the moon will keep showing up anyway, like a lullaby made of silver, like a heartbeat that doesn't need a body to thump. Even the stars blink, but the moon, it lingers, like someone waiting by the doorway just in case you come home late, like a friend who doesn't knock but leaves the porch light on. And maybe tonight, as you start to drift, that soft glow will follow you into sleep, not to ask questions, not to pull answers, but to simply be there, a witness without judgment, a gentle reminder that even when no one else sees you, something does. So rest now. Let that quiet light wrap around you. Let it hold the version of you that doesn't know what tomorrow needs, the version of you that doesn't need to explain the ache. It's okay if you drift off in the middle. The moon will still be here, watching you back. The chain that frees you. There is a strange peace in knowing the shape of your edges, like a hand resting gently against a wall in the dark, not to be trapped, but to understand where you end and the world begins. Boundaries don't only confine us. Sometimes they give the chaos of life its contour, its rhythm, its beauty. A voice breaks the hush of the moment, soft and unhurried. Do you ever feel like the rules you hated growing up are now the ones you rely on just to stay upright? Another voice, warm, a little amused. All the time, I used to want to burn the map. Now I'm just grateful it tells me where the cliffs are. There's an old truth hidden in that conversation. It's easy to believe that freedom is the absence of restraint. But imagine a river with no banks. It's not free. It's lost. It floods everything and reaches nowhere. The edges, the banks, they're what give it direction, pressure, purpose. And isn't that true of us? Your mortality isn't a curse. It's the drumbeat that makes every quiet moment worth listening to. Your flaws, they aren't failures. They're fingerprints pressed into the clay of who you're still becoming. Your endings, yes, even the ones that cracked you in silence, are not just exits. They're punctuation, the pause that lets the next sentence breathe. In a dim-lit cafe, two strangers sit across from each other, hands curled around warm mugs. One leans in, eyes searching. How do you know when something's a limit, or just fear pretending to protect you? The other tilts their head, quiet for a beat. When you push against it, and it pushes back with kindness, that's a boundary. When it pushes back with shame, maybe that's just fear. There is wisdom in that. Some chains are rusted locks, yes, but some are wind chimes, catching the breeze of your becoming. What if your limits are not prisons, but perimeters, hand-carved so that your spirit doesn't dissolve into everything, but instead becomes something? Perhaps freedom was never about breaking everything. Maybe it was about choosing which constraints allow your song to rise, clear and unwavering, like a dancer inside a circle, not trapped, but choreographed by the edge, like ink inside a line, not caged, but composed. Close your eyes now. Feel that invisible chain, still there, yes, but looser now. Not because it was cut, but because you've grown strong enough to wear it like a ribbon instead of a shackle. Let that thought rest against you like a blanket on a tired shoulder. The next moment is waiting, and it carries no demand, just the gentle truth that even your chains can carry grace. The traveler, with no destination. A gentle hush rolls in like fog across an empty road. Not silence, not sound, something between them. You're walking, but for the first time, it doesn't matter where. There's no finish line tonight, no final exam waiting, no audience with a scorecard. Just the slow rhythm of your breath and the quiet companionship of questions that never needed answers. Where am I headed? We often ask. But tonight, let's ask something softer. What am I becoming? Two strangers linger outside a late-night cafe. One steps forward, holds the door, and says, "No need to rush. The best stories don't happen on time anyway." You don't answer, just nod. The moment doesn't need anything more. The road you've been walking, so carefully plotted, so rigidly mapped, suddenly softens beneath your feet. Not crumbling, not breaking, just yielding, like sand warmed by dusk. And in that softness, something shifts. The future is no longer a destination. It's a mirror, one that only reflects when you stop trying to reach it. You pause beneath a street lamp that doesn't flicker. A couple passes, murmuring, "Do you think we'll find it?" I don't know, but I like the walking. That's the secret no one tells you. Sometimes the most important journeys are the ones that fold inward, not forward, like rivers that don't rush to the ocean, but instead swirl into quiet eddies, circling until they learn their own depth. You don't have to chase purpose tonight. You're allowed to drift, not in laziness, but in liberty, not in giving up, but in letting go. Someone once told you, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up lost. But maybe lost isn't the worst thing. Maybe lost is just a word we give to freedom when we're afraid of what it might feel like. There's no train to catch, no step you missed. You didn't fall behind. You stepped away. Under a sleeping sky, even your thoughts begin to soften. The edges blur. The sharp questions, am I enough? Did I do it right? Start to dissolve into the soft foam of night. The traveler without a destination is not broken, not unfinished, not aimless, just breathing, just being. At a quiet bench by the edge of nowhere, someone asks gently, "Do you mind if I sit here? My feet aren't tired, but my soul is." You smile, not out of politeness, but because that's exactly how you feel too. No map, no rush, just this moment, just this breath. Let's take one more soft step, and if sleep greets you along the way, let it. You can always return to the road tomorrow, or not. There is no wrong turn, only the rhythm of wandering, and tonight, that is more than enough. The shadow that tells the truth. There is a part of you that never lies. It follows you, even when you're standing in the brightest light. Quiet, constant, a silhouette made of everything you swore you weren't. Not evil, not broken, just unseen. The shadow isn't there to scare you. It's there to speak when your voice shakes, to hold the parts you've exiled from your own reflection, the bitterness you swallowed, the rage you denied, the tears you never let fall. It gathers them all like an old friend you once abandoned, but who never left your side. Two people sit at the edge of a bus stop at dusk. One leans back, watching the clouds thicken. "Do you ever feel like there's someone else inside you?" the first asks. The other laughs softly, but it's not a mocking laugh. All the time. Sometimes I wonder which one of us is real. And that's the strange part. The version you show the world, the polished, curated self, might not be lying, but it might be incomplete. Carl Jung said the light doesn't free us, not on its own. True healing begins when you shake hands with what you've pushed away, when you stop painting over your sadness with pastel smiles, when you sit in silence long enough to hear the truth echo up from below your surface. Sometimes it speaks in unexpected ways, like the moment you lash out at someone you love, and it surprises you more than them, like the times you sabotage your own happiness just when things begin to go right, or that gnawing guilt when you see someone suffering and you feel relief that it wasn't you. A man drops his keys late at night. A stranger picks them up, hands them over, and says, "Funny how we always find what we weren't looking for. It's not just about keys. It never is." The line lingers. Maybe sleep is when the shadow becomes brave enough to speak. When your masks fall with your heartbeat. When the persona you've built can finally take a breath, and the quiet, honest self underneath can whisper, "This is who I am." You're not the parts you hide. You're the one choosing whether to meet them with fear or with forgiveness. A woman standing in line whispers to no one in particular, "I'm not mad he left. I'm mad I became someone who begged him to stay." The person in front of her doesn't respond, but their silence feels like permission. We've all worn a version of ourselves that felt safer than the truth. But what if that safety was the real danger? What if ignoring the shadow only lets it grow teeth in the dark? Don't be afraid of the dark tonight. It's not the monster. It's the message. The forgotten you. The child who stopped asking questions. The teenager who never got an apology. The adult who still flinches when they're praised, unsure whether they deserve it. Let them speak. Let the darkness speak. It's not trying to haunt you. It's trying to come home. The thread that binds all things. Somewhere, far from the noise of your daily life, beneath all the scrolling, the scheduling, and the subtle pretending, a single question hums like a distant song. Who am I? It doesn't knock like a fact. It doesn't shout like urgency. It's just there, soft, persistent, like a pulse beneath a thick blanket. And you're not the first to feel it, nor the last. Thousands of years ago, someone knelt by firelight and whispered the same question into the wind. A monk under the Bodhi tree, a sailor watching stars on a forgotten sea, a child staring into a puddle that held the sky. That question, who am I, is not just yours. It's a thread, a shared echo between strangers across time, speaking in different tongues, but listening with the same heart. Two strangers sit at a park bench, not meaning to talk, but one turns and asks, "Do you ever feel like we're all just here, waiting for something?" The other sips their coffee, pauses. "Yeah, like we forgot the appointment, but we still dressed up for it." Laughter, recognition, the thread pulled. There's another question. Why am I here? Not in this room, not in this city, but here in the stretch of existence. As if being born wasn't random, but gently assigned. As if life itself tapped you on the shoulder and whispered, "It's your turn now." A stranger once held the door for you and smiled. You made it. I always admire the early ones. They had no reason, and yet somehow it felt like something deeper was being acknowledged. And then that final thread. Is there more? More than work, more than the weekends, more than collecting little joys to fend off larger questions. Even if you never say it aloud, it whispers from the edges, in a song that makes your chest ache, in the stillness after someone leaves, in the way your body sighs when the world finally goes quiet. One day, maybe you asked it aloud without realizing. You stood in a store line, glanced at the stranger beside you and said, "Is it just me? Or does today feel heavier than usual?" And they answered without blinking, "It's not just you." Some days feel like old memories we can't name, just like that, thread to thread, mind to mind. These aren't questions with clean answers, but they are bridges. Every time you ask, you touch a part of humanity too often forgotten, the part that listens rather than speaks, that wonders without conclusion, that dares to stay awake even while drifting to sleep. You may not remember every thought in this moment, and that's okay. Sleep doesn't need permission. It only asks for softness. So let that thread guide you now, not like a leash, but like a ribbon of light winding gently beyond the noise, past memory, past names, into something quiet and whole. It's still with you, even if your eyes close. The ice that remembers water. There's something about winter silence that feels familiar, not cold, but paused. You've been holding yourself together for so long that it almost feels like who you are. But ice wasn't always this way. It's just water that forgot how to move. Maybe tonight, you are that ice, still on the outside, sharp-edged, but deep within, there's a memory, a movement, a softness that once knew how to flow. Do you ever feel stuck in your own skin? A voice asks quietly, like someone sitting next to you on a late-night bus. The other answers, all the time, but I think it's just me trying too hard to be okay. That kind of conversation happens in quiet corners of the world, in laundromats at 2 a.m. or outside cafes just before closing. People sitting with themselves, asking questions no one else hears, not looking for answers, just permission to feel. Beneath all your structure, your routines, your strength, your control, something ancient remembers how it felt to be fluid. Before the world asked you to be strong, before you thought stillness meant weakness. The pressure to be okay freezes you, doesn't it? You smile when you're tired, numb your fears so they don't spill out. And when someone asks, "How are you?" you say, "Fine," because it's easier than explaining why you're not. But fine is ice. It's quiet, smooth, acceptable. Yet no one sees the cracks beneath. Still, warmth is not always a fire. Sometimes it's a glance from a stranger who doesn't look away, or a friend who simply says, "You don't have to explain." It's the moment when someone holds the elevator for you and says, "I thought you looked like you needed a second." Small gestures, gentle heat, and the melting begins. There's a wordless return happening within you tonight. Not a collapse. A soft surrender. The kind that doesn't break you, but frees you. Your heart, even when frozen, has not forgotten how to flow. The patterns you think define you, the silence, the detachment, the control, they're just a phase of matter. And phases change. Two people at a bus stop talk beneath flickering light. One says, "I think I forgot how to cry." The other replies, "No, you just froze for a while. It'll come back. It always does." And that's what this night is for. Not answers, but return. Not performance, but presence. Like the moon's reflection on thawing ice, it's not about speed. It's about becoming again. If you find yourself softening, that's not weakness. That's truth. If you feel something move inside you, that's the original you, the water, still alive, still waiting. Let the stillness hold you now, not as something stiff, but something sacred. You are melting, not breaking. And beneath all that stillness, the water remembers. It always remembers. Sleep if you want, or listen quietly. Either way, the warmth is already working. The cloud that rains ideas. It begins with stillness, not the absence of thought, but the kind of stillness that swells, like the air before rain. You're lying there, eyes half closed, and something stirs. Not loud, not sudden, just building. Somewhere just beyond reach, ideas are condensing, invisible, waiting. A woman in the cafe glances at her notebook, untouched for hours. Then a drop, a line comes to her, not from effort, but from allowing. She whispers, "Finally." Her friend across the table smiles. "You stopped trying, didn't you?" She nods. "I think the cloud was always there." That's how it happens. Thoughts do not march in through the front door. They drift, they hang in the sky of your mind. You can't pull them down by force. But if you stay still long enough, they begin to fall. One word, then another. One feeling, then a whole paragraph. Inspiration is not lightning. It's weather. And like the sky, you don't own it. You stand in it. You wait, not impatiently, but attentively, because something is forming. You can feel it. A man on the train closes his book and stares out the window, not bored, waiting. He taps the glass once, then murmurs, "Why do I feel like something's coming?" The woman next to him replies softly, "Maybe your mind is raining behind the scenes." Sometimes the storm is gentle, a mist of clarity that settles on your thoughts like dew. Other times, it's a sudden downpour, where words come too fast to write. But either way, the ideas aren't born from pressure. They descend, they arrive, and when they do, you don't chase them. You simply step outside into the rain. What has been circling above you, quietly, patiently? Is there a question you keep dodging because the answer might flood everything? Perhaps the delay wasn't absence. It was build-up. Let the sky open now. Let yourself be soaked. You don't need an umbrella. You don't need to understand it fully. Presence is enough. Just like that, a thought falls, and another. Sleep follows gently, because sometimes the heaviest thoughts fall first. and wash everything else away. The silence that speaks the loudest. There is a kind of silence that doesn't wait to be filled. It doesn't ask questions or expect answers. It simply is. A presence, not an absence. You don't notice it until it's already in the room, like the moment after a door closes and the air feels heavier, or the way your chest tightens before you speak something you're not sure you're ready to say. This isn't the quiet of an empty room. It's the quiet of something alive. Two people sit on a park bench, side by side. One reaches into their bag for an apple. The other just watches the breeze run through the trees. No words exchanged. Still, something passes between them, an understanding shaped by nothing but stillness. Did you say something? I was just listening. To what? I'm not sure, but it felt louder than anything I've heard all day. That kind of silence, when the world pauses, not from emptiness, but from fullness. When the weight of being human grows too wide for words. Sometimes it's in the space between a laugh and a tear. Sometimes in the breath before you say, "I'm sorry," or the moment someone leaves a room and doesn't come back. We often think the truth has to be spoken. But what if the most honest parts of you are the ones that can't speak at all? The ache in your throat when no one's around. The way you stare out a window and feel something move inside you, but nothing outside has changed. A stranger holds the elevator. A child falls silent in the middle of explaining their dream. Silence becomes the thread running through all these things. A thread that doesn't break but hums quietly under the surface. And in that hum, a question. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you're not explaining yourself, not performing, not trying? Just you, surrounded by air thick with truth, even if no one's there to hear it. Someone once said, "I don't know how to say this, but I feel it." Maybe that's the point. Maybe feeling is the language we speak when words run out. And maybe silence isn't the absence of communication. It's what remains when everything unnecessary falls away. Let that pause hold you. It knows more than it lets on. Stay there just a little longer, where nothing speaks, but everything is heard. The next moment is already waiting, but it's not knocking. It's whispering, softly, from the space between your thoughts. Let's meet it there. The end that never ends. You've made it here, not to a conclusion, but to a fold in the page that turns itself. A man once leaned against a train window at dusk, eyes tracing the scenery. The woman across from him whispered, "Are you getting off at the end?" He smiled gently. "I don't think there is one. I just stop where I feel still." That moment, it wasn't about a destination. It was about surrender. That's what endings really are. Not a door closing, but a soft dissolving of walls. The kind of fading that happens when you stop measuring things, like time or value or self. Sleep isn't a goodbye to the day. It's just a shifting of gravity, a slow rebalancing inward. In this space, stories untangle themselves. There are no chapters, no titles, no summaries, just whispers that don't need listeners. The mind doesn't shut off. It just floats away from structure. Like wind across water, it leaves a ripple, not a mark. Maybe this isn't segment 50. Maybe it's still the first sentence, still unfolding, still echoing. Or maybe it's neither. Maybe it's breath. Two people pass each other at the edge of a park. One says, "You ever wonder if rest is just the body remembering what it means to not try?" The other, smiling softly, replies, "I think it's the only time we're honest. Because in sleep, you stop performing. You stop pretending to be consistent. You stop asking the clock to justify your worth. Instead, you allow the parts of you that never had words to speak in silence. Here, the lines blur, between day and night, between the narrator and the listener, between what was and what simply is. You're not falling asleep. You're returning to something older than thought, a language made of stillness, a memory you never had, but always carried. And so, let the thought dissolve now, not like a drop in the ocean, but like the ocean realizing it was always the drop. No need to say goodbye. This story doesn't end. It gently continues without punctuation, without applause, without needing to be understood, just felt, let go, not to vanish, but to arrive, gently, quietly, endlessly. 3 hours ago, we asked, what are the darkest thoughts ever imagined? But maybe. Darkness is not what hides things from us. It's what holds them, gently, patiently. Like the ocean floor holds ancient bones, like silence holds unsung songs. You've drifted through questions with no answers, through shadows that didn't bite. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You don't need to explain your mind tonight. You don't need to solve the maze. Because sometimes, the greatest relief is knowing that not everything needs a meaning, only a place to rest. Sleep well, wanderer. The dark has never been empty. It's always been full of truths we were finally brave enough to whisper. Fade to silence. One faint breath, then stillness.